Oh, here it comes, the business end of this race as they head right now into the final 600-700 metres. Essex Quick-Step have control, but Mark Renshaw is looking for Mark Cavendish. He's sitting in about fourth place, looking very calm, very collected, but surrounded by all the big guns. Marcel Kittel, there's a crash behind. Several riders have come down, but the sprinters are all at the front end of the race. Andre Greipel is still there. Kittel is on Cavendish's wheel. Cavendish looks across. Peter Sagan opens up his sprint, the world champion. Cavendish reacts. Kittel comes through the centre. It's going to be Peter Sagan, is it? Kittel trying to get on terms with a Slovakian, and Mark Cavendish is going up the right-hand side of the road. Cavendish at the front end of the race now. Cavendish is going to do it! Mark Cavendish has done it again. Just when everybody writes it off, he proves them all wrong. Time and time and time again. What a result for Mark Cavendish. This means everything to this man. Absolutely everything in this moment. He beat them all, fair and square. Back to winning ways on the race he loves, the race he dominated for years. And on the first possible opportunity in the 2016 edition, Mark Cavendish knocks up win number 27. And with that, he takes himself the yellow jersey.
Now, here's your historic souvenir Mark Cavendish general classification graphic, downloadable for just $12.99 from the ITV website. And it's likely to be a limited edition of one, as we'll see in a moment when we take a look at today's route map. Marcel Kittel is 4 seconds behind him, Peter Sagan 6, and most of the rest of the field at 10 seconds, including Daniel McClay, who marked his Tour debut with a top 10 finish yesterday. Now, time gaps are extremely useful, of course, otherwise there'd be no knowing who was winning the race. But behind the hard facts, there's soft tissue, and the road rash yesterday told a much more vivid story.
Contador is down.
The big crash of yesterday in terms of the race overall was Alberto Contador's, a simple but extremely painful loss of traction on a corner, resulting in high-speed contact with a curb. He needed medical attention to his shoulder and help from his teammates to make it back to the field. But as nasty as his injuries looked as he headed for the team bus, he was playing the stoic.
Bueno, iba a haber muchísima tensión porque estábamos luchando por estar adelante, por el viento. La verdad que íbamos muy bien colocados, muy atentos, hemos entrado en la curva junto con el resto del pelotón, pero bueno, había un bordillo, hemos rectificado unos cuantos y yo creo que en mi caso se ha ido a la rueda delantera, creo que los iban a mi lado también. Y bueno, al final pues hemos patinado y nada, al suelo. La mala suerte también es que había un bordillo al lado y se me ha golpeado la espalda y es lo que me tiene un poco fastidiado, pero bueno, vamos a ver. La verdad que tengo el cuerpo entero magullado, el lado derecho, desde el tobillo hasta el hombro. Y nada, esto es el ciclismo, al final son muchos meses de preparación y mira, el primer día ya te caes. Pero bueno, mira, afortunadamente no me he ido para casa. Voy a intentar pasar estos primeros días de la mejor manera posible y espero a la montaña llegar ya recuperado.
The second crash of the day came at high speed on the narrow home straight. Katusha's Michael Murku apparently hit by a fan leaning over the barriers and bringing down several of the riders with him. The worst hurt of them looked to be Sam Bennett of Bora Argon, but the good news this morning is that he, Murku and everyone else involved has been passed fit enough to start the stage. So that's the good news. We still have 198 riders left in the race, and of course crashes are an inevitable part of racing, which doesn't mean to say that there isn't more that could be done to minimise them. And Chris, right before yesterday's crash in the home straight, we actually saw a fan leaning so far out over the barriers that Greg Henderson in the red of Lotto Soudal actually had to duck.
Well, it's the fine line that cycling has always balanced, isn't it? That the crowds can get this close to the stars, the people they've come to watch. I mean, Henderson's reaction's incredible, considering that they're doing, 60+ kilometres an hour there. But that's so close to disaster. There's so much energy in his body as he comes through. And we've seen in cycling time and again, I'm afraid, that we only change procedures when something catastrophic happens, as it did back in Armentières back in '94.
And that was when they created the little cubby holes for policemen to stand in, although you don't expect policemen to stand out into the road, step out into the road to take a photograph. But really what the riders are blaming, certainly Greg Henderson at the start this morning, was blaming those fences, those straight fences with the little feet. And it's not just the feet that caused the problem. There you can see the feet sticking out into the road, which can be a problem in itself, but it's also that they're straight, because you see when you get to the fully barriered part, they're not only clean to the ground, are they, Chris, but they're angled backwards so that the crowds can't get as far, as close to the riders, even if they do lean out.
So catalysed by that incident back in Armentières, that's when they came up with this kind of barrier. So they're quite aware of the problem, and it makes sense for the whole run-in that you just simply put your hand in your pocket and buy some more. I mean, the last kilometre at the very least, which we didn't get yesterday, but really could go back 2 or 3 kilometres.
Now then, Mark Cavendish, he's going to be savouring his day in the yellow jersey today, not least, I suppose, because he's very likely to lose it at the end. Yeah,
he is likely to lose it today. I got the feel, I mean, watching his form and also watching him in the national championships when he was really feisty all day, that if he really went for the win, I don't think he'd get it, but he'd be close enough to possibly hang on to yellow. Having said that, I'm not sure he's got the confidence to go for that, and he may choose some different tactics. It's going to be a real messy final, that's for sure.
It is going to be a messy final. Let's take a look at the map before we join live racing. There it is, the route on which Mark Cavendish is going to ride the Tour de France as race leader. 183 kilometres from Saint-Lô to Cherbourg. Plenty of exposed coastal roads again as the race heads up the Cotentin Peninsula. So the favourites will be at the front of the field, trying either to profit or not to lose out from the crosswinds. And they'll be up at the front again when the race hits the Côte de Glacerie at 3 kilometres to go. There's a little false flat after that, and then another kick up towards the finish. We think it should be too hard for Cav, but he nonetheless was the centre of attention down at the start this morning, and right next to the centre of attention was Daniel Friebe.
Mark, we said you always get emotional in the Tour de France. I think there were a few tears last night. What were some of the other emotions? Did you feel vindicated, relieved, or just ecstatic?
I was just happy, you know, we're celebrating with the team. The thing is, it's quite unromantic, but there's 20 days left, you know, and you start burning the candle at one end on the first day, you know. You haven't got the energy by the end of the Tour de France, so we had to get back to business, but obviously for myself and the team, it's been fabulous to wear this yellow jersey, you know, and we'll try and defend it with honour today. So.
And today it's a tough finish. Presumably you're going to try and stay as close as you can to the leaders to maybe get this yellow jersey back, maybe tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll see. Once upon a time, you know, I'd have been quite up for this stage, but I think there's more punchers around nowadays. You know, we've got a brilliant one, the best in the world with Edvald here, so I think today's kind of his stage, and we'll do what we can to keep him here. He didn't lose any time. He did an incredible job for us yesterday. He's a bit banged up, but you know, it's a tough one, so we'll put him into contention today. So.
Cheers, Mark.
Well, Bosenhagen possibly a contender, Peter Sagan too, Julien Alaphilippe. But before they can all race it out on the final hill, they've got to catch the break, which has a healthy lead so far. Let's get over to commentary as we see Dimension Data at the front and join David Miller and Ned Bolte.
Thanks very much, Gary. Good afternoon, everybody. And there's the first glimpse that you're going to get of Mark Cavendish in yellow. British cycling fans have waited an awfully long time to see that, and after his blistering performance yesterday, that is the sight that greets us today. The fulfilment of a dream for Mark Cavendish. Overcast conditions today, although it is brightening up and the roads are beginning to dry. 4 riders have got up the road there, and they have a healthy advantage. 6 minutes and 25 seconds. Now, the man with the polka dot jersey, he's in the breakaway for the second day. That's Paul Foss from Bora Argon 18. And he has a teammate up the road with him as well, Cesare Benedetti, at the front of that pace line of 4 right now. The man behind him for Trek Segafredo is the prodigiously talented young Belgian Jasper Stuyven. And making up the 4 is the rider from Norway and from Fortuneo. That is Vegard Brein. Now, Jasper Stuyven has won 2 of the first 3 Category 4 climbs of the day, and that makes his total in the King of the Mountains competition 2, and he is equal with Paul Voss at this point on 2. However, Jasper Stuyven is better off in the general classification, and as things stand, he is the virtual polka dot jersey King of the Mountains on the road. However, in the final few kilometres, or final 1.5 kilometres, there is one more Category 3 climb to come. So Stuyven cannot be sure of his polka dot jersey on the podium today. It's quite complicated, that. We'll get into that in some detail later on. That's the situation as regards the breakaway riders, though, but further back down the road and a little bit before we joined live coverage here, There was an incident again involving Alberto Contador. We saw him crashing yesterday. Well, I'm afraid to say for Contador fans, he's been down again. Now, as you can see, not harmed, not hurt this time, but certainly delayed in a big crash with a number of big names delayed in the middle of the peloton. Tony Martin, who you see just at the side of the picture there, was the man we think responsible for this crash. He certainly brought down Marcel Kittel, who might well have been on his wheel. No big harm done, but Alberto Contador was delayed more than most. Roman Kreuziger, I think, was one of his teammates who was sent back to pace him back on. But a bad start to the Tour de France for the second successive day for Alberto Contador. And David Miller, that won't have done any serious damage to him, but it's indicative of a man who's just not having the rub of the green at the moment.
No, I mean, I think, well, yesterday I think he admitted it as well. We've seen other footage since his crash. It was simply an error. He was going around too fast and his front wheel washed out. But this one, it seems, by the riders that went down in the crash today, is just proper bad luck. I mean, the road was wet, they'd just come off a speed bump, and it would appear it happened at the front, judging by the amount of riders, the kind of big name riders. We saw Bardet delayed, there was Tony Martin, Roman Kreuziger was there as well. And so that's indicative of it being near the front. So he was placed well, he wasn't riding in a sort of silly position. But, you know, sometimes it's like that. It's, as you say, it's probably expecting a third now. It's in cycling superstition, as in everything, these things come in threes, so might as well just get it done as soon as possible.
Yeah, get all your bad luck out of the way. It's a big lead, 6.5 minutes, and that means that the virtual yellow jersey on the road at the moment is Jasper Stuyven. He's the best placed of these riders in the general classification. 3 of the 4 are just 10 seconds down, as is pretty much the whole field to Mark Cavendish. Just a few riders losing time yesterday. And Palvos was one of them. He's actually 2 minutes and 30 seconds down in the general classification. And that means that he's at a disadvantage in terms of the polka dot jersey, because with 1 more climb remaining and 2 points for that climb available, you have to go to count back effectively. If another rider from the pack emerges and it all comes back together and takes those 2 points, there'll be 3 riders all on 2 points, and then it goes to count back in terms of the general classification. Slightly more complicated than that, but we could get lost endlessly in the regulations, so as and when that becomes relevant, we'll get into the detail of that. Now, Steve Cummings is on the front, David Miller, and we always notice him when he's at the back, which he often is, let's face it, but we did wonder when we were having breakfast this morning whether or not Cummings would be put into team duties, which is not necessarily his strength, but here he is doing his job for Mark Cavendish today.
Yeah, it's turned the race upside down. He's been a front man for a long time now. I think he's been doing the majority of the workload himself, so that's Steve. I mean, he's got the engine to do that. He's kind of can just, and he probably has nominated himself to do the lion's share now rather than have to do the final, because he could have equally kind of been there in the final to be the final man for Mark Cavendish, which, to be honest, would have made a bit more sense. But he's obviously put his hand up, so he perhaps didn't want to do that, and he'd rather just do the hours of kind of on the front during the middle of the stage.
And on an ordinary day, you might have fancied Steve Cummings for the win today. He's one of the riders, and there are many who will fancy their chances today, always assuming that the 4 breakaway riders are caught. That is a healthy advantage that they have, but the pack have 92 kilometres to bring them back. Dimension data are working for the yellow jersey of Mark Cavendish, and we're going to have plenty more opportunities to observe the Manxmen all dressed in yellow. What a day out it's going to be, and what a fascinating race we have in prospect, because the final will be complicated and exciting, I can guarantee that. We're going to take a short break for now, though. And the advantage for the 4 men up the road is beginning to come down, heading closer and closer all the time to 6 minutes. Still a big lead, and there they are. Further back, though, well, there are so many riders who will fancy today's stage, and the carrot that is dangled with it, the very real possibility of a yellow jersey. And the bookmakers make the world champion Peter Sagan the clear favourite for that, and it would be a first yellow jersey for him, much like Mark Cavendish yesterday. So few people in the cycling world would begrudge him that opportunity. Matt Rendell, you've come in to join us again, and you've been having a little look at how world champions fare on the Tour de France down the years, and it doesn't always go their way, does it?
Well, you'd be surprised just how rare it is to win a Tour de France stage wearing the rainbow jersey. Amazing the list of riders who never managed to do so. Bettini, Evans, Gilbert, Rui Costa, Kwiatkowski and so on. Cipollini couldn't do it. Johan Museo, Bugno, Stephen Roche. Cav was the last rider to do so, Mark Cavendish, stage 2 of the 2012 Tour, and stage 2 props up a lot in the statistics. Thor Hushovd won a stage 2 in 2011, but that was a team time trial, so he wasn't wearing the jersey. Oscar Freire won stage 2 in the World Championships jersey in 2002. But Greg LeMond, amazingly, won the Tour as world champion in 1990, but he did not win a stage that year, so it's a very, very rare thing to do. It would be even more special if Peter Sagan can do it today.
And there's absolutely every reason to suspect that he might, because David Miller is in the form of his life at the moment, isn't he, Peter Sagan? And really, really strong yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, I think yesterday's sprint he did, yes, it was phenomenal, but it looks like he went from about 300 metres, which is in sprinting terms extraordinary. It's extraordinarily long. Normally 200 metres is kind of where they set their sort of limit to launch their sprint. But he found himself, I think, a bit badly placed and really took the decision to kind of go for a long one, which ended up profiting, allowing Cavendish to use him essentially as his lead-out man. But in order to be able to do a 300-metre sprint in the Tour de France stage at that speed shows that he's on just crazy form at the moment, which we kind of expect from him. He seems to always be on crazy form. It's rare for him not to be flying. So we'll see today.
There's Alexander Vinokurov, still the reigning Olympic champion. The team manager of Astana getting out and giving Jakob Fuglsang a hand with his wheel change. And still Steve Cummings continues at the front of the race. There's Tony Martin, just looking for signs of cuts and bruises to him. I believe he came down in that accident involving Alberto Contador earlier. But Contador is safely back in, and so too are all the favourites.
It wasn't an easy chase for Contador. At one point, they were 2 minutes behind when he set off. So I think he was quite fortunate. Dimension Data decided to slow down a bit because I think there were so many people down in the crash. Sometimes that happens to the team in the front because it wasn't a pressing moment in the race. Just out of courtesy and respect for the peloton, they slowed it all down, which was lucky for Contador because he'd been standing at the side of the road for over 2 minutes by the time he got going. So yeah, it's definitely not the best. You don't want that any bike race, but you don't want it at stage 2 after on your second day in a row crashing and in what is going to be a very difficult finale.
Yeah, Director Sportif Sean Yates, of course, at Tinkoff these days has tweeted, I believe, or made it known that Alberto Contador fell on the same shoulder he hurt himself on yesterday. But all is well. It's not ideal, he says, but no big harm has been done. Jakob Fuglsang, the next rider, just weaving through the peloton and trying to get himself back in the race. 84.7k to go, and still there's 6 minutes and 17 seconds between the breakaway up the road and the peloton. David, you and I were out in the pouring rain this morning, weren't we, on a couple of bikes, and we went down road sort of backwards down from the finishing line to about 6k, turned around and came back, and it's pretty hard actually, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
We were puffing a bit.
Yeah, it was. I think we went further than that, Ned. You're robbing us. I think we did like the 8. I think the left ended up doing the final 8Ks. We rode out and turned around and came back over the final 2 little hills. And yeah, I mean, we thought it might be a bit more technical. It's not actually so technical once you get into those final 8Ks. It's on fairly big boulevards most of the time, apart from this very steep section in the finishing climb. And the final 3Ks, I mean, we were comparing it a bit when we were out there to it being a combination between a sort of an Amstel finish and Amstel Gold Race, which is one of the classics in the Netherlands earlier in the year, where it has a finish up a sort of a similar climb, but I'd go as far as saying this is actually harder than that, but it's quite similar in the fact it sort of plateaus off a bit, about a K from the summit, which is exactly what happens in the finish today, but it then drops down a bit, but then you've got the final 500 or 600 metres are continuously dragging, and it has what I think will prove to be the sort of deciding thing, a sort of a dog leg sort of corner with about 800 metres to go, which will force the peloton to string out into one line. And that's where we'll possibly see gaps, and everybody will know that. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see GC teams and no doubt Team Sky just going as hard as they can up there to make sure Chris Froome is one of the first riders into that last K.
Yeah, we were comparing it, you're right, with Amstel Gold, etc., but we also thought about Milan-San Remo, because there's a couple of climbs. It's not just that last categorised climb. Before that, there's an uncategorised climb as well in the Cipressa sort of style.
It's a bit shorter, but yeah, I mean, it's almost like a mini San Remo.
It's like a mini, scaled down, compressed version of Milan-San Remo.
So, I mean, it's definitely kind of one of those finishes which I think is going to be very interesting, and we'd expect the sort of riders. I mean, I've been going through listing the type of riders that I think stand a chance, and I think we've come up with about 30 so far, so that's not very helpful. But yeah, it's sort of thing where Cancellara, Valverde, I think even Chris Froome could do something today if he fancied kind of attacking kind of on the very steep section, which he might do just in a sort of a more of a defensive way to make sure he's well placed in that last K. The best form would then be to just attack and force everyone to come back up to him, and then he could sit safe. But at the same time, there's guys like Michael Matthews, Simon Gerrans, who would no doubt make this will be one of the biggest targets of the race, as well as Dan Martin, Julian Alaphilippe. Although Dan Martin is saying it's not hard enough for him, which to be Dan Martin. But I think for most of the guys, this is going to be very hard. And I think, sadly for Mark Cavendish, it's going to be a bit of a stretch for him to hold this jersey.
Vincenzo Nibali has expressed the fact that he is very interested in today's, and remember him on the Tour de France 2 years ago on stage 2 into Sheffield when they went up that brutal climb of the Côte de Jenkin Road, I think it was called, and he attacked on that day and he won the stage and he took the yellow jersey. But he's, as you say, one of so many riders. Ridiculous. Once you get started on a stage like this, you kind of can't stop, because riders like Tony Gallopin come into the frame. I'm just looking at how many you've highlighted here. It's quite extraordinary. All the big GC players are definitely in this race today, and they certainly won't want to be losing any time vis-a-vis each other. So that almost automatically, involuntarily puts them on the front foot.
No, exactly, and I think we will see the big GC teams, because the road is very large coming into it. Like I said, it's almost like as wide as this road here, and even wider through Cherbourg itself, almost double this at times, which is going to allow all the GC teams to kind of drag race themselves up into the climb. But what they have, with about 2 Ks to go, K and a half to go, is a roundabout, a sort of almost, they go 180 degrees. No, not quite, but almost all the way around, and it forces them to essentially thin out into one line just before they hit this steep section, which goes up to 14%. And so all teams are going to be racing to place their GC riders there. And I think those GC riders are, unlike a stage like yesterday where we differentiate between the GC riders and the stage teams all competing at the front, I think most of the teams will see at the front of GC teams who will also be wanting to win the stage.
Well, we continue to crisscross the Cherbourg Peninsula today. Not dissimilar to yesterday's stage, in fact. Most of today's race hugs the western side of the Cherbourg Peninsula. Departed earlier on today from the town of Saint-Lô, which was heavily involved in the Normandy landings as well, and was pretty much obliterated by aerial bombardment. And we are going north to Cherbourg. But David, I know that even on the way over to Normandy today, as you made your way from your home in Spain, you've been reading up a little bit about the D-Day landings, and Saint-Lô is a particularly resonant town. Yeah,
I mean, during the actual D-Day, it was bombarded to the degree where 95% of the town was destroyed. And Samuel Beckett actually coined the phrase, the capital of ruins. And I think they spent many years deciding whether they're actually going to rebuild it or leave it as a monument to the destruction and devastation, as a reminder. But then, after about 4 years, they decided they'd rebuild it, and it's essentially almost a new town now. But yeah, it was, it's quite marked that it's still known as the capital of ruins.
Cherbourg itself, the port of Cherbourg, who many of you will know, of course, for crossing the Channel. Ferries there over to the United Kingdom, the south coast. But Cherbourg itself was badly bombed as well. And these towns bear the scars to some extent. Now, there are 3 Norman riders. Michael Cherel for Éditoile La Mondiale is, of course, one of those. And the man we saw in the breakaway yesterday in the colours of Fortuné of Vital Concept, Anthony Delaplace. He hasn't made the breakaway today, but he'll be motivated. Probably most of all, though, the rider for BMC at Amael Moinard, who comes from Cherbourg. And I actually think in the closing 4 kilometres, we go past the school that he attended, who've put a little banner out to honour their local man.
It looks like it. And that's going to be invaluable advice, kind of to know for his teammate, knowledge for him to be able to advise Richie Porte and TJ Van Garderen. It's often the way it is when you've got a teammate that's a local, he's able to tell you about it, and because it's one thing doing the reconnaissance, it's one thing looking on Google Maps, looking at the profiles in the books, but having somebody who's lived there and ridden those roads over and over in different conditions is always a great way to actually know what's going on.
Mark Cavendish appeared to be absolutely incensed about something there. Did you see that? Catch a glimpse of that? Right at the front, in conversation with not one of his teammates, but someone from another team, gesticulating wildly and just not happy about something.
That's the sort of thing that often happens in the feed zone. Maybe a rider just came up and chopped him up trying to get his feedback, and And you don't want that to happen, because as we were discussing yesterday, you've just made a silly mistake and that guy goes down, and he's going to take down Mark Cavendish. So he's in every right to be insensitive if that's what's happened. I mean, they're sitting on the front dimension data. They have the right to be there, and I think maybe they just got swamped by the riders trying to get feedbacks, and you don't want to do that with Mark Cavendish, especially when he's in a yellow jersey, because he will just go off with you like that.
Has he calmed down? Read those facial expressions. I don't think so, not just yet.
But that's probably a good sign. Like you said yesterday, actually, when he's angry and kind of fired up, that's usually when he's at his best. So it bodes well. And I think he's going to go deep today in the final. I mean, it's one of the things, he's not just going to sit up and let it go, but it's going to be an extremely demanding final for him. With the kind of combination of that little build-up, kind of the kicker, as we call it, before they go into that finish climb, he'll find himself already sort of stretched and in the red when they hit the bottom of it. So it's going to be very demanding, and it's whether his team will be able to match the drag racing of all the other teams. But at the same time, when you're in the yellow jersey, you can almost sit where you want, although perhaps a little less so in today's peloton, where it's not like the old days where having the yellow jersey, you'd just be kind of surrounded by a force shield and no one would touch you. But that same respect doesn't really exist anymore.
Well, an intermediate sprint is on the horizon. We've got time to take a very short break. The gap, though, has come under 6 minutes. We'll be back in a moment. 200 metres to go then for the breakaway riders. The only intermediate sprint of the day, and on paper the favourite is at the back. Jasper Stuyven picked up 5 points at the finish line on stage 1, so he's already on 5 points with 20 up for grabs at this intermediate sprint. Stuyven exactly where he wants to be right now, on the wheel of the Norwegian, with the two Bora Argon men leading things out. Cesare Benedetti on the front. Paul Voss, has he got the legs to try and compete for this, or will they just roll through? Well, in fact they do. Benedetti takes it from Paul Voss, with Jasper Stuyven content to take 4th place, and the points available for 4th. Only 4 riders up the road though, so when the peloton comes through in 6 minutes time, there are more points available, and we expect to sprint for the points. Well, it's a bit of a non-event in the end, has to be said. I expected a bit more of a scrap between these 4.
Well, I think they had their scraps for the climbers' points, and ultimately those points don't really mean anything to them. That I think Paul Voss and Stuyven have kind of had their battle, and they called it quits, and they're just going to work together, which often happens in a breakaway. Otherwise you'll just make people angry, and kind of you'll lose the cohesiveness of it, and just somebody will stop riding. So it's better just to carry on as if it's not there. On the other hand, for the peloton, I don't think that would be the case. I mean, we saw yesterday that even though it was a flat-out sprint for the sprinters, they still took the intermediate at the finish. They took the intermediate sprint relatively seriously, and I think that's going to be the same case today. Especially as for many of the sprinters, the finish won't interest them this slightly. So in many ways, this is a bit of a finish line for them, for the likes of Kittel and Greipel. Cav will probably do what he normally does, just sit up there, get claimed, like roll across in 5th or 6th. And Sagan will probably do similar, although he'll just want to get some points and then save as much as he can for the finish today.
Well, there will be points for the next 11 riders across the line at the intermediate sprint point, and the winner of that race will collect 11 points. So it's a sprint for 11 points. Mark Cavendish, just to mark your card, leads the green jersey competition. Of course he does, even though he's wearing yellow. Today, Marcel Kittel is actually wearing the green jersey. He's in 2nd place today, and Cavendish has a healthy lead. 16 points he has as an advantage over Marcel Kittel. So Cavendish is on 56, Marcel Kittel on 40, Peter Sagan on 29, and Andre Greipel also on 29. Points available for the first 11. There is Marcel Kittel, right in the middle of your screen, in the blue shorts, white helmet and the green jersey, and he's got Peter Sagan on his wheel. So the signs are that this will be competitive. Yeah,
you can see Christoph is on launch up. Just suddenly saw Mark Renshaw just kind of twitch and move as well. So you can see Dimension Data, they're not putting their full team on. They're not bothered with the lead out. Christoph and his team Katusha are doing that, and Mark Renshaw is simply going to kind of guide Mark Cavendish into place and do all the work, so that Mark Cavendish, in theory, will never have to see any wind.
So they are beginning to ratchet things up. Movistar are there, but that is a watching brief. 1 kilometre to go until the intermediate sprint. Direct Energie, they'll be working for Brian Coquard. Good finish from him yesterday. But Alexander Kristoff has a little bit of work to do so far on the Tour de France. A little bit disappointing yesterday.
As
Of course,
Marcel
though, he
Kittel
was disrupted. Sorry, David, just to complete my thoughts, he was disrupted by that big fall from Michael Mercu. Glad to say he is in the race.
You see Marcel Kittel is just sitting on the wheel of Mark. He's just been knocked off, actually. I'm not sure who that was that did it, but then he got Greipel. So they've got Mark Cavendish, Andre Greipel, and Marcel Kittel sitting on Christoph's wheels. So that's going to be it's going to be a proper sprint here, I think. We'll see, especially from Kittel. I think Mark will be just happy just to stay on Christoph's wheel the whole time, and then might not even challenge him on the line.
There you go. All the favourites are lined out, and Andre Greipel is the first to go. So Greipel moves to the inside of the road. He draws with him Marcel Kittel, and Peter Sagan is on his wheel. Christoph has opened up his sprint on the right side of the road, but Greipel has the advantage at this point. Cavendish is just sitting up a little bit, just watching. Greipel, I think, is going to take the points just from Alexander Christoph and Marcel Kittel. All the favourites, though, in action, and not much separating them. But a little victory for Andre Greipel. He'll take 11 points. That was rather good fun. Fast and furious, and to some extent that was their finish line for many of those men. That is Michael Mercu at the back you're looking at there, who was involved in that horrible crash working for Alexander Christoph on the sprints yesterday, and it's good to see him back in the race. And that little posse of sprinters have just been drawn back into the peloton, and it's as you were. Sometimes, of course, you do see counter-attacks go after intermediate sprints like that. It's always quite fun when that happens. Peter Sagan has been known to do that in the past.
No, exactly. I mean, I think it depends on what part is in the race. Perhaps not in this first week, because the race is so sort of disciplined and there's so much at stake on GC that riders don't really get the freedom to do that sort of thing. But as the race progresses, and especially in the last week, we see those sort of moves happening.
Well, the injection of pace sprinting for those points in the peloton has knocked off a full minute from the advantage of the breakaway riders up the road. But as you can see, the GC teams restore order at the front. For Nairo Quintana, Movistar are all over the front. And temporarily, the team of Mark Cavendish, Dimension Data, ceded control to the others. They've done the early part of the racing today, controlling things for the first 110 kilometres. There's the yellow jersey of Mark Cavendish in the middle of the pack, but his team are no longer on the front. Yeah, there's Michael Mercu, the Danish rider. Something of a track specialist, a six-day rider, but has tasted success on the Tour de France in the past. And it's really good to see him, because that was, frankly, really worrying, that crash yesterday.
I mean, that was a sort of crash. You never like to see any crash, but it looked like he almost stopped dead in a way. It's like his arm of wheel got caught in the barrier, and it just kind of catapulted him around, so creating that the kind of the aftermath of the crash that then was set in place like dominoes. But yeah, I was amazed that he got back up. I thought it was all over for him.
Sam Bennett, who we also saw coming over the finishing line, the Bora Argonne sprinter from Ireland, in some distress, clutching what looked like a potential broken collarbone or something like that. He started today's race, but the last we heard from him, he had been gapped by the peloton and just dropped off the back, and that's the last information we had about Sam Bennett. So clearly struggling, suffering a little bit today. One can only hope that he makes it to the finishing line and can get better over the next few days and salvage his Tour de France. Remarkable that every rider started today's race. If you're wondering why the riders from Lotto Soudal have yellow numbers as opposed to white race numbers on their backs today, that's because they are leading the team's competition. And somewhere in that pack as well, there'll be a rider with a red number, and that is will be worn today by Anthony Delaplace, who won the Prix de la Combativité yesterday, selected by a jury as deemed to be the most combative rider for his refusal to give up yesterday. There's some big names at the back of the peloton there. Thomas Voeckler bobbing around in trademark style right at the back, and a couple of wheels in front of him, the flaxen locks of Fabian Cancellara, one of David Miller's potential picks for today.
It is a sort of finish that really does suit him, the kind of the hard climb, sit up there, perhaps jump inside the last kilometre, or he is a formidable sprinter, Fabian Cancellara, perhaps not with the out-and-out sprinters, but when he's with the kind of the climber classic guys, he's one of the fastest in the world. So he'd probably have a similar tactic to Peter Sagan, which would be to kind of cover as much as possible, try and hold on to the climbers when they go, or the sort of punchers as we call them, and then try and roll them when it gets to the line. But if he's feeling really good, I wouldn't be surprised to see him go kind of at the top, because there's a tiny little micro sort of descent, sort of a little bit of recovery with corners, with probably descent's a strong word, more of a false flat sort of descent. And that would be the perfect opportunity for him to go, because once he's got a gap, it will be very hard he's one of the riders that you just don't let ever get a gap, basically, because he could take it all the way to the line.
Bernie Eisel is on the front now for Mark Cavendish and Dimension Data, just controlling the pace. There's Fabian Cancellara. That's actually not. That's another rider with long hair. That's actually Shane Archbold. Got my mullet wrong there. Not that Fabian Cancellara has a mullet. That's probably doing him a slight disservice.
No, Spartacus wouldn't have a mullet.
Cancellara's opportunities on this Tour de France, his last ever Tour de France, are going to be limited. So he does have to identify stages like this today, because even though there are 2 individual time trials, which is obviously his specialist discipline, they're not going to suit him terribly well. In fact, one of them, you'd have to rule him out of contention altogether, because it's a mountain time trial.
No, exactly. I mean, I think there was a stage actually in the Tour de France for years, just come to my mind now, about 4 or 5 years ago, where we started, I think, in Belgium, and there was a finish there. It was Gilbert and Cancellara were attacking. It was a sort of climb and a plateau at the top, very similar to this. And yeah, no, and you're right. For many riders, this will be one of the stages they've targeted, the types of Michael Matthews, Simon Gerrans, because that's what you do months in advance. You'll pick the stage, you'll see which one suits you, and this, for many of those riders, will be one of the very few chances they get to go for a win. So that will be, we'll know when, with about 10 Ks to go, which one of those riders is going for it, because we'll see their teams congregate in the front.
Well, if you like your racing to be uncertain, and if you like a game of roulette, none better than today's racing. Every time you look, get a shot of the peloton, whether it's at the front or the back, you see potential race winners. That's the fascination of today's stage. There are 67.4 kilometres of racing, though, until we find out the answer to that question. An arm waved in the air by Cesare Benedetti as the 4 riders up front continue to ride out their advantage. It's gone out slightly, actually, down to 5 minutes not so long ago, and back out again to 5:24 at this point. So a lessening of the pace back in the main field, and Movistar are extremely prominent. What do you read into that, David? Is that just a job for Nairo Quintana, keeping him safe as they did so excellently yesterday, or does that suggest ambition in terms of Alejandro Valverde for you today?
I think they have a two-edged sword in that they have Nairo Quintana, who everybody knows and it's been announced as their out-and-out GC leader, but at the same time they have Alejandro Valverde, who is who merits being kind of getting leadership for a stage like this. I mean, if he's going to lay it all down for Nairo Quintana through the whole race, they'd probably like the gesture of giving him a chance today to try and win something for himself. And if ever there was a finish that suits anybody, along with about, like I said, 20 other guys, Alejandro Valverde has to be one of those guys. He's always excelled in the Ardennes Classics, Amstel Gold Race, Flèche Wallonne, Liège-Bastogne-Liège, and always in Grand Tours and stages similar to this is where he's kind of at his best, the sort of the uphill finish, and especially where it's what we're kind of comparing it to classics, where it's not just a straight up kind of numbers game, power to weight, etc., mountain finish where it's the fittest who wins. This is going to be a very tactical finale as well, so it's going to have kind of a combination of physical brawn and brains, and that's where Valverde really comes into his own. So I think we'll see Movistar working incredibly hard to place Nairo, and then Alejandro Valverde can just profit off that.
A strong team today will make a significant difference, and Movistar are most certainly a strong team. So too are Team Sky and Astana as well. So those riders already have an inbuilt advantage given the way that their teams are going to approach this running. Yeah,
because it's going to come down to positioning very much in the last as it always is in the final 2Ks, but in particular here because of you've got the big roads coming into it, and it starts going uphill about 3.5 Ks, but it's dead straight on a massive boulevard. So you're going to have lots of teams drag racing, and if you don't have a team that can position you there, it's about a K later you're going to see that left-hander at the roundabout and find yourself on what is effectively a kind of a single track road with 14% grades. If you're not at the front there, you're not going to be in the race, and you need an incredibly strong team to go against the likes of Team Sky, Tinkoff, Movistar. So for somebody like Michael Matthews, Simon Gerrans, they're going to kind of have their work cut out positioning, because they're going to have to piggyback kind of those other teams. But that's not to say that's a bad thing. We saw Mark Cavendish do it yesterday, although Mark Renshaw gave him a fantastic lead out. He was having to ride fairly opportunistically.
Giant figure in the middle of the peloton who you saw just a couple of moments ago flouting the helmet regulations by taking his helmet off was Matt Hayman, the Australian who won Paris-Roubaix, to general applause from the whole cycling community earlier on this year with great style. One of the big hearts and big men of the peloton, getting his day in the sun. What an achievement that was. But firmly back on domestique duty on the Grand Tours. And in fact, he was riding as a domestique just 2 days later after Paris-Roubaix. I forget which race it was, but straight back into it, wasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, he is one of the most respected riders in the peloton. He's had a career that's been... he's been a professional domestique his whole career. He sort of realised quite early on that was his niche. And he became more than that. He kind of ended up being a road captain who could be there, who could be relied upon in some of the hardest bike races in the world, to be at the front when needed, to be looking after his leaders. And I don't think it ever crossed his mind that he'd be one of the leaders, be one of the guys that would win one of the biggest bike races in cycling. And even on that day when he won it, he set off with a domestique mentality. He'd broken his arm 6 weeks before. He was just thankful to be there. He launched off. He was in the first breakaway and ended up being there the whole day, being on one of those magic days where he just floated over everything and found himself in what was one of the most thrilling finals to a race we've seen in a long time, matching kind of pedal stroke for pedal stroke some of the greatest classics riders in the world, and ultimately beating them all.
Don't be alarmed by the split in the peloton that you're seeing there. As the rather unfortunate television images just suggested, this is a phase in the race where riders are taking the opportunity to have a comfort break, and that big group of riders just detached from the back of the race at the moment is just gently working itself back into the peloton. So that's not a racing situation, so to speak. David, if Matt Hayman, as you say, a domestique, can win Paris-Roubaix, why couldn't you win Paris-Roubaix, for heaven's sake?
Probably, I don't know, I never did the classics when I was younger, and probably wasn't good enough, to be honest, but I'd have loved to if I'd realised in my younger years that the classics were something that I kind of, now in hindsight, I was suited for.
Yeah.
I mean, Flanders, Roubaix, etc. But it was a different sport back then, and it just seemed impossible to me that racing 260, 270 kilometres seemed way beyond me. And I found my niche in my early years of time trialling and small stage races, because I felt I could do that well clean, to be honest with you. I couldn't really compete against the other guys in those bigger races. But, you know, I think if it started again now, I'd love to kind of have the options and do very much what Geraint and Luke Rowe and Geraint Thomas and Luke Rowe have done with Team Sky, which is they kind of... You see how much they love bike racing, and if you love bike racing, then the best ones in the world, the best races in the world, are those northern cobble classics. They're just so much fun. And yeah, I mean, but I got to do it a bit towards the end of my career, but I probably never really got to exploit my full potential in them.
Indeed, Geraint Thomas, Luke Rowe, Ian Stannard, all on this race, but have concentrated for consecutive seasons. Less so Geraint Thomas this year, of course, but in the recent past on winning those cobbled classics in the spring in Belgium. But, you know, the puzzle is they haven't actually won one of the big ones, landed a monument just yet.
Liège-Bastogne-Liège, Wout Poels.
Not one of those riders I just mentioned, though, was he?
No, true.
I mean, but all that suggests is, I'm not, you know, remotely suggesting that any of these riders aren't capable of doing that. It's just extremely hard to do.
Oh, no. I mean,
so
it's
much harder to control.
Yeah, it really is. But they're getting closer, and I think with Luke Rowe and Ian Stannard, they really do have two riders there that I believe one day will win one of those cobble monuments. I mean, Ian Stannard came so close this year, and I think if they hadn't had that sort of team crash that they had with about 40Ks, 50Ks to go, then there's a chance that Ian Stannard might have won it because he lost all his teammates. But again, that's part of racing. If crashing, you can't crash if you want to win. But I think they've got the right attitude and they're working really hard. But yeah, like you said, I mean, the classics we see, each nation has their sort of their niche, if you like, and for the Belgians and Dutch riders, it is those races. It's what they grow up on. They grow up in these flat races, cobbled, technical, just bonkers sort of one-day events. And the Italians, they're kind of used to hillier races, which have these sort of circuits in the final, which have hills in them. So that's very much how you see all the Italian riders are much more suited to the Ardennes classics. And that's where the stage race riders as well. Spanish riders all grow up on stage races and kind of mountains. A lot of their races are mountainous, so that's why they have so many climbers. And I think now with the British and the Germans and basically the Anglo-Saxons and the Americans as well, it's much more scientific based, so much more into the time trialing, the kind of the training, etc. And yeah, it's each nation has its little kind of its style.
Interesting. The time gap has gone right out again to 6 minutes, and there's less than 60 kilometres to go. So at some point they're going to have to bring these four back. Powerful breakaway though. Paul Voss proved just how strong he is, the German from Bora Argon. Yesterday, Cesare Benedetti, well, I watched him win the King of the Mountains competition in repeated breakaways in Tirreno Adriatico this year. Strong as well in Lombardia. Vegard Brein is actually a lead-out man, the Norwegian, for Dan McClay at Fortuneo Vital Concept. And Jasper Stuyven, well, he won Kern, Brussels-Kern, precisely what you were just talking about, a Belgian who is absolutely built for the Cobbled Classic. So there are four strong riders up the road, and they've got a 6-minute advantage, David, with 58k to go. So it's just beginning to enter that territory where you'd have to say they're going to have to get to work.
Yeah, I mean, but it's just been Steve Cummings that's been riding the whole time, and we haven't seen anybody else who's kind of, which it's been a phenomenal workload by him. It's been amazing, but at the same time, we can see that now he's losing time on these guys, and at some point, another team's going to step in, and that's perhaps what Dimension Data are doing. You allow the time gap to go up to force another team into action.
The gap goes up over 6 minutes. We're going to take a short break. The chase will have to start pretty soon. The rain jackets are off, the arm warmers are coming off, the roads are drying out, and the race is hotting up. The battle is about to commence. 5 minutes and 51 seconds the breakaway has. Cesare Benedetti, two riders from Bora Argon, Brein from Fortuneo Vital Concept, and this is what it looks like down the road with 53.8 kilometers remaining for the four in the breakaway. Dimension Data are in control. Natnael Bahani on the front. Steve Cummings has clearly done his stint now and has been retired from action. There's the yellow jersey of Mark Cavendish. Big deal for Mark Cavendish, this. A huge day out in yellow. Who knows whether he'll get the opportunity to hold on to it today? That seems unlikely. Possibility, I suppose, that he might be able to regain it. There's a bunch sprint expected tomorrow with, of course, a 10-second time bonus for the winner. But you'd have to say it's a bit of a long shot. So it may never happen for Mark Cavendish again. But I think one of the glories of yesterday's stage result was this sense of closure for Mark Cavendish, that one outstanding objective as a road racer away from the Olympic Games just had been achieved, and there is nothing that he hasn't done there.
No, I think it's probably a little bit the elephants in the room, if you like. And although people might have said the gold medal, a medal at the Olympics would be the other one, but I think really in cycling terms, that's it now for a sprinter. He's now kind of achieved almost everything there is to achieve as a professional road racer. He's got the leader's jersey in all 3 Grand Tours. He's been world champion. He's won Milan San Remo. These are all the sort of the blue ribbon events, kind of the iconic things. So he can now kind of have his study with whatever it is, the walls covered in all these jerseys, and it's a pretty amazing thing to have. And it's, I'm so happy for him, because I know what he's like, and even if he had 27, 28, 30 stages, if he'd never got that yellow jersey, he would have it would have been something that would have niggled him forever.
Yeah, not just niggled him, but probably niggled all the rest of us as well, talking to him about it, and that one glaring absence. But brilliant performance yesterday, and that's his reward, the yellow jersey. Now, what about his all-time stage wins on the Tour de France? He's on 27 now, and over the last couple of years, there's been this, predominant feeling that record of Eddie Merckx's 34 suddenly looked, a couple of years ago, you'd have said there was a natural assumption that one day he would get past Eddie Merckx. But last couple of years, we put that to one side and thought it's not going to happen. Still realistic?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's, let's say it's the Cavendish of old, knock up 3 stages, another 3 stages of this race. I mean, that brings him ever closer. It's Cavendish at his best. That's 2 tours he could rack up that amount of stage wins. But obviously, and I think yesterday was at his best. We haven't seen that in a long time. So it's it's something that I sent a message to him last night, kind of saying, please do it, because it would just be an amazing thing. To imagine somebody in this day and age could break one of Eddie Merckx's records is it's kind of mind-bending, considering just how out of this world all Eddie Merckx's records are.
He's only one win away from getting on level terms with Bernard Hinault, another of the 5-time legends of the Tour de France. And it's actually very fitting. I think Christian Prudhomme, the man who runs the Tour de France himself, will be delighted for Mark Cavendish, because he's made almost no secret of the fact that he has designed courses over the last 2 or 3 years with opportunities for sprinters on stage one, very much with Mark Cavendish in mind. There was a reconfiguration of the green jersey competition in the early years of Christian Prudhomme's reign, which he openly said was designed to give Mark Cavendish a realistic chance of taking the green jersey onto the Champs-Élysées. He's a big fan of Cavendish, isn't he, and recognises his place in this race's history.
Yeah, I think so, and I think it's good for the Tour de France brand as well to have a champion like Mark Cavendish. You know, it's kind of, it ends up being, it's a name that everybody recognises, and I think sports, all sports like to have these kind of, what I think the Americans refer to as marquee sort of athletes who kind of are bigger news, and it's good for all the sponsors of the Tour de France. So I think it's not just an emotional kind of fondness that Christian Prudhomme has for Mark Cavendish, it's also cold, rational business.
Yeah, fair enough. That was me trying to be romantic about it, and you just bring it down to euros in the debit column and the credit column. There's the world champion, Peter Sagan. So strong yesterday, and would have been disappointed, I'm sure, to see the Manx missile charging past him in the final. Looked like he had that. But in the end, it was his work, actually, that Cavendish managed to benefit from, as Marcel Kittel himself suggested. He paid full credit to Mark Cavendish and acknowledged that he was beaten by a faster man on the day, but he did just suggest that Cavendish, and I think the word he used was lucky. You do need to be lucky, but that's a moot point, really. Is it luck or good judgment? A bit of both sometimes.
Didn't look very lucky to me. I mean, it looked like the fastest rider there, and I think one of the things about these great sprinters is they do tend to be lucky consistently.
You make your own luck.
Yeah, exactly. It's the harder you work, the luckier you get. And I think some of those sprinters have an innate ability to kind of find gaps that others don't see. They manage to avoid crashes that others don't. And I think it's one of those things. That's what makes them the best in the world. And I think André Greipel's like that, Mark Cavendish, Marcel Kittel. They have a lot of other sprinters that are constantly in third or fourth, and that's because they just don't find those gaps. They don't miss those crashes. So, yeah, I think you could call it luck, but I also think it's just ability as well.
Bit of both in play, but the ability outweighing the luck. Cherbourg Peninsula shrouded in clouds today, a fine drizzle hanging over the race, in contrast to yesterday's sunny conditions. Tell us about those cliffs, David. What do you know?
I know they're the highest in Europe. It's 130 meters high.
The highest in Europe?
Yeah, I know. Crazy stat.
Surprising. There they are. The highest cliffs in Europe, according to David Miller. And who would dispute that fact? I'm certainly not going to, unless any geologists out there know better. Feel free to message David Miller.
The Nez de Cherbourg. Yeah, that's it.
The nose of Joburg.
128 meters to be exact, if you want exact facts, if anybody's going to try and conflict my statistics. Among the highest in Europe, I'll clarify that as well. I'm just going to backpedaling now as much as possible.
It's wonderful. Wonderful. Yeah, Normandy has delivered. It's delivered wind, it's delivered wonderful scenery, great crowds, and fantastic racing. And from a parochial British perspective, the right outcome yesterday. And this is back in the here and now. And still Dimension Data are controlling the pace of the peloton. And the advantage is still big, isn't it? 5:45, and now we're under 50 kilometres to go. At some point, they're going to need some help here.
Well, it's strange. I mean, it's you know, normally at this point you'd expect another team to kind of come up and take over. That's kind of normally the sort of unwritten rule, is that the leaders team will control the first half of the race, kind of control that first hour of kind of controlling which brake goes away, and then just keep it at a safe distance. We'll say 5 minutes is around, in modern cycling, the sort of safe distance. But they wouldn't necessarily be the team that then brings it back, where they kind of would anticipate. And that's what we saw earlier. They'd let the gap go a bit out and hope then that another team would they'd call bluff and say, look, we're happy with where it is. But the thing is, all the other teams know that they're not happy with where it is, because that puts the brake, they're in the virtual lead at the moment. So normally in this situation, maybe the best placed rider would be no threat to the leader's jersey, but they all are at the moment. But at the same time, maybe Mark Cavendish will say, look, we're not controlling it. I can't win this stage today anyway. I can't defend the jersey, so it's up to you guys to bring it back. And I think they found themselves in a bit of a kind of, they've their bluff has been called, because now they're stuck there with it at 5:39, and they need another team now to come up and help.
It's interestingly poised right now as the helicopter looks down on the peloton. Pick out your jerseys, your favourites. Pick your winner out of this pack. A couple of interesting outliers we haven't necessarily considered. David, I'd like to throw the name of Alexis Villamoz from AG2 La Mondiale into the mix. A winner at the Mur de Bretagne on last year's edition, and it's not the same as the final of the Mur de Bretagne, but it has certain similar characteristics today. And how about a totally different rider from Villamoz, who's a kind of puncher? How about Andre Greipel?
Yeah, I mean, Andre Greipel at his best could possibly do this. And similarly, Mark Cavendish, I've seen him do things as well similar to this in the Giro d'Italia. But this is a kind of, it's a Tour de France, and you've got so many exceptional riders here, their kind of ultimate fitness. I think even for Andre Greipel and Mark Cavendish at their best, they're not going to stand, they're not going to be able to beat those specialists. But again, and there are so many, and I think also there's a Herrada from Movistar, who won a similar sort of finish in the Dauphiné recently, and didn't just kind of win it, he destroyed it. I mean, the way he made everybody else look like amateurs to his professionalism, kind of how fast he went. But so that could be a kind of a bit of a dark horse within the Movistar team.
He nearly destroyed us that day as well, didn't he, commentating? We were looking at his teammate Danny Moreno, and suddenly another Movistar rider just came crashing around the side and tore the race apart and run at a canter, going away from the rest. And that was Jesus Herrada. He's a rangy rider, big tall man, very, very powerful. So BMC have their troops lined out for probably Greg Van Avermaet on today's stage. They're at the right-hand side of the bunch, but they're not working. It's still Dimension Data who are trying to control things. The virtual race leader, though, is the rider at the moment from Trek Segafredo. That is Jasper Stuyven. Started the day 10 seconds down, and he's one of a quartet of riders who still have a healthy advantage as we go back to the highest cliffs in Europe.
It's the Hague Cape Lighthouse.
Where?
You wanted to know? There, that lighthouse sticking out. Yeah. Built to defend, to warn people of what is, so you know, one of the strongest tide currents in Europe, the Blanchard current.
Well, I'll leave you all at home to absorb those facts, that string of facts from David Miller of A Maritime Nature. Meanwhile, BMC is showing a little bit more interest at the front, so too Movistar. And there's your lighthouse. They've got a chance, these four, most decidedly so. They still have an advantage of over 5 minutes and 42.3 Ks remaining. Dimension Data, doing the chasing and the controlling for the yellow jersey of Mark Cavendish, are a little bit friendless, at least last time we saw the action back in the peloton. That was definitely the case. That is Sam Bennett, who was in a bit of trouble earlier on in the day, suffering from the aftermath of a crash yesterday. And the last information we had, he had been dropped off the back of the peloton. He's still at the back, but he is in contact, which is good to see for the Irishman and good for his team. They're the two men really most hurt by yesterday's brutal crash. That's Michael Mercu from Katusha, Sam Bennett.
Oh, poor guy. I mean, look, that's the worst state to be in. He's just hanging off the back, and it's not going particularly hard here. So you just see how badly damaged he is.
Just needs to get through today, if he can.
And then tomorrow.
And then tomorrow.
And the day after.
Yeah, I was trying to be encouraging. Yeah, it's a hard day for Bennett.
It's going to be a long 41 Ks for him, poor guy.
Opportunity for him again tomorrow, if he can get through tomorrow.
As well.
Mercu's suffering,
the two guys who crashed yesterday. You can see the effects a crash can have on you, even if they've not broken anything or had to. It kind of puts the body in such shock. And so it just shows how much more impressive Alberto Contador is to be up there looking okay, which also goes to show some of those guys, the GC guys, they are so fit and strong that they can even recover quicker from crashes.
I remember Thomas de Gent in, I think, 2011, where he crashed very badly along with a number of other riders on stage one, telling me on the first rest day, I had a cup of coffee with him, and I said, how you go? I haven't seen you since the crash. You've been almost invisible, which is most unlike him as a rider. And he said, look, you know, once you've crashed, even if you don't break anything, it feels for days like someone's taken a sledgehammer or a hammer, I think, to every muscle in your body. I don't know why that is. Is it because you tense so much and everything seems to get toxins in it, the muscle fibers?
There are a lot of contractions, so it's like you kind of, and also inflammation. And then there's the added thing that you don't sleep well at night because, you know, it's just everything's bruised up and cut. And yeah, I won't go into the gnarly details of it, but it's just not, so you don't recover as well at all. No, it's and to have it on the first day of the tour, it kind of puts you on the back foot now for the rest of the race, because you're just gonna, this first week is so nervous as well the whole time, which is kind of, it's got very spiky sort of efforts, kind of up and down, which is the hardest thing to do when you're injured. So this is interesting for Dimension Data. They've got themselves not in a situation yet, but they do really need to kind of put the pressure on now and try and bring it down to 4-3 minutes and entice another team to come on and take it over. I think that would, which is, I think, is what they're doing. They've got it down by another 30 seconds now, 5. If they can get it down to under 4 minutes, closer to 3, then I think you'd see another team jump on the front immediately and then take control of the race.
Well, the point being, of course, that the other teams don't want to expend energy when they don't have to. It is the duty of Dimension Data to protect that lead, race lead, the yellow jersey of Mark Cavendish, and the other teams will just benefit from the work that they put in at this stage of the race. It's coming down. It's coming down reasonably quickly now, but it's going to have to. They're going to have to maintain this pace advantage over the breakaway group of 4. Undulating, rolling, quite narrow roads now as they start to head inland again and across the peninsula towards Cherbourg, which is on the very northern tip of the Cherbourg Peninsula. There are a number of teams who sent their outfits up to the front. BMC. You can see Richie Port in about 6th wheel, just a small figure of the Tasmanian rider on the left-hand side of the road in the red kit. Astana in the blue alongside him, and they've got Vincenzo Nibali, of course, in their midst, and Fabio Aru. Happy birthday to him, 26 years old today. The notional team leader of Astana. Let's see how that plays out over the coming weeks.
Well, we're going to get an indication today already, because I'm sure Vincenzo Nibali's not going to hide himself and ride defensively or conservative in the final today. So that's all, and Fabio Aru will be fully aware of that. So it'll be interesting to see how they work together in what is going to be an interesting and tactical, not only tactical, but extremely hard final.
And through they go, and the gap is now 5 minutes, 39.1k for the group of 4 up the road. Great crowds. The wonderful flag of La Manche, this area of Normandy, the red flag with the yellow lines on it. That's been so evident over the last couple of days. It's one of the great pleasures of the Tour de France. As you plough your way around France, the flags change, the landscape changes, the weather changes. What a journey it is. Only just beginning. Had so much drama and excitement yesterday. It's what this race tends to deliver, day in, day out. So I'm cycling on the front now. And so too are Direct Energie, this team with the black and yellow circles in their kit. If you only watch the Tour de France, and perhaps that's the only race throughout the year you pay close attention to, you'll be used to seeing Thomas Voeckler, of course, in the familiar green kit of Europcar. Well, it's the same team, but with a different sponsor now. Direct Energie came on board as their sponsor, and the colour changed. So if you're looking out for Thomas Voeckler, that's what he looks like. Last time we caught a glimpse of him, though, he was at the back. So perhaps that would suggest that Direct Energie are full of hope for another rider. Might well be Brian Coquard.
Brian Coquard, yeah, I think so. I mean, he's a kind of sprinter who can get over hills, and it's yeah, it would be silly not to give it a go. And here we have Orica Bike Exchange, excuse me, their new sponsor and their new colours. So this is a big stage for them, which no doubt they've targeted. And now you can see they're taking over. They're going to try and bring this back, because it's one of the few opportunities that they'll have. So they really should start working with Dimension Data. They'll be riding for Michael Matthews and Simon Gerrans, who are actually 2 teammates that I wouldn't say don't get on, but have had kind of conflicts, not only in the national team but on their pro team.
Well, they're both feisty characters, aren't they? And they both target the same kind of stage as well.
Exactly, they both target exactly the same stage. So there's a style of racing, the sort of the hilly sprinter, sort of exactly the racing we were describing, the Ardennes style. And the stage finish like today is perfect for Michael Matthews. It's also perfect for Simon Gerrans. So it's going to be a little bit of a death match between the two of them, and I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see them working for each other.
Well, Michael Matthews fell yesterday. He was caught up in that horrible crash in the final kilometre. But even though he fell pretty hard, he's pretty bullish about the state that he's in and said it's okay, he's not too bad. But he might just be a little bit hampered by that fall. Simon Gerrans, well, we haven't seen too much of him this year by his own high standards, so I'm not entirely sure what form he's going to take into this Tour de France. He's worn the yellow jersey before, though.
In theory, you'd expect Simon Gerrans, because we haven't seen much from him of late, to be at the disposal of Michael Matthews. If they're there in that last K, you'd hope. Well, I don't know, and I don't know how both of them are going, but you might envisage Simon Gerrans leading out Michael Matthews. So it'll be interesting what happens.
Now the gap is beginning to come down a little bit faster. They've shaved off another 30 seconds, 37.3, so that's come down pretty fast now, and that is because Orica Bike Exchange are sharing the work now, and that helicopter shot does reveal that Dimension Data are no longer at the front of this race, and now the other teams are coming forward.
And what's interesting as well, they must try and get this back, and even Astana are riding now, because they have a very strong team, and this would kind of point towards Vincenzo Nibali being interested in going for the stage today.
Yeah.
But the thing is as well, Orica Bike Exchange have now dropped back, so you can sense now that the nervousness is there, and Dimension Data have pulled off now. They're like, okay, now you guys can take control. We've done our work, we've controlled it all day, now you guys bring it back. Poor Morku just getting further distance with Sam Bennett. They're trying to stick together and suffer through this together if they can.
Yeah, good luck, Michael Morku. You've only got just under 40k to go, but they're going to feel hard, and they are hard as well. Undulating territory all the way through to the finishing line here, and the last 7-8 kilometres are pretty hilly, has to be said.
It's the worst feeling being in that situation, because you just have no power. You could see the sort of vacant look on his face. There's nothing you can do. It's not even as if everything hurts. It's as if your body's just completely empty.
And you can see how quickly the peloton is getting away from him as well. Really quite a degree of urgency now in the race. Direct Energie with Antoine Duchesne, the Canadian rider, has got to the front.
And one of the things as well must take note, and which the peloton will be aware of, is that at 23 Ks to go, they have a fairly long descent before they kind of enter into the sort of the suburbs of Cherbourg and start the more up and down, what we definitely classify as the proper final, where it's going to be imperative to be at the front. But at 23 Ks, if they haven't brought this time gap down by much more, it's going to be a little bit fine. But again, it is such a difficult finish that maybe the peloton's counting on the fact that that breakaway will be so tired that it will simply hemorrhage time, and what will have appeared a threat will disappear in the space of 10 kilometers as the peloton increases its speed massively, and the break just gets slower and slower.
Chase being headed by Direct Energie now, with Astana in close proximity, and Movistar too. We saw Nairo Quintana being looked after by 2 or 3 teammates, very close to the front of the race. Also a glimpse of Richie Porte and TJ Van Garderen, the GC favourites. I can't really see either of them attacking today. I should imagine for Van Garderen and Porte it's a safety first day. Typical Norman architecture now. Those roofs in particular, the old tiles of Normandy, absolutely distinctive, and how it changes. I actually rode to the start of the Tour de France from Brittany this year, and there is a moment where you suddenly realise you've gone from Brittany and their trademark churches and architecture, and you start to encounter buildings like this, and you know that you're in Normandy. So Jasper Stuyven driving things on with the 2 men from Bora Argon and Brain from Fortuner Vital Concept, and they've worked really well together, these 4. They have a 4-minute advantage with 34.7 kilometres to go, and the nature of the roads, as you see in this part of the Cherbourg Peninsula, are in their favour. Narrow roads, twisting, turning, up and down, undulating, difficult to get the chase really organised in the peloton. It's happening, and it is coming down, but they haven't given up just yet, and they won't do for some kilometres still to come, as it goes under 4 minutes for the first time. A lot of anxious glances in the peloton now, and a lot of pain faces beginning to emerge as the chase continues. And it's not a foregone conclusion just yet. 30.4 kilometres remaining for the breakaway, 3:47 their advantage, and Dimension Data are on the front again. Daniel Tekla-Heimanot, well, he's done his turn already for Dimension Data and for the yellow jersey, worn today, of course, by Mark Cavendish. And he finds himself dispatched from duty and at the back of the race. Will it be Peter Sagan's day as the race has just 30 kilometres to go? 3:49 the advantage, or will the day belong to someone else? Will it even belong to the 4 men up the road, because they haven't been caught just yet? And it's interesting, isn't it, that Dimension Data found themselves with 2 riders on the front again, David?
Yeah, I mean, it is still their responsibility, and also that allows Mark Cavendish to sit up there with a bit more authority by the fact he has a team riding. So even though he's in the yellow jersey, it doesn't necessarily mean that he's just going to get treated with, like, as if he's wrapped in cotton wool. He needs to have that team sort of up there, kind of present to kind of keep that influence around that part of the peloton. And, you know, it's still 3 minutes 49, so they have to bring this gap back.
Oh, that's rather fantastic, isn't it? All the local products represented. And that's taken a bit of making as well. Little spots of rain appearing on the camera lens as well, just to complicate things still further. Big wide roads when they get to Cherbourg, but before they reach that point, it's pretty narrow. Twisty, turny, up and down all the way. Jasper Stuyven, the form man, the real powerhouse in this quartet of riders up the road, but Vos in his second breakaway on stage 2 in the polka dot jersey, and Benedetti and Brain have been working extremely well together and continue to do so.
Geraint Thomas.
Wheel change for Geraint Thomas. He'll have to get back up front as soon as possible and resume his place looking after Chris Froome. Perfect for Chris Froome yesterday. Absolutely incident free, and that's what he wants to achieve today. Although there is a school of thought which suggests if Froome senses an opportunity to hurt some of his rivals, he'll take it.
I think that would be the kind of... I envisage seeing Team Sky up there. They've got such a strong team, it would be silly for them not to kind of try and control the last few kilometres, and sometimes that form of kind of being offensive is the best way of being defensive. That means he'll be in the right position, and we've seen Chris Froome do it before. When he's in that position, if he's feeling that good, he'll just clip off the fronts and kind of make it even easier for himself, because then that makes other riders have to come up to him rather than him chasing things. So I'm not sure, but I'd anticipate seeing Team Sky really take control, but really at the last possible minute, I imagine, in the final 10 kilometres.
Now Vincenzo Nibali has all his troops up front. He's wearing a white helmet today, just to distinguish himself from the rest of his team. And he's in about 6th wheel in that blue Astana train. And still Direct Energie on the right-hand side of the road in the black kits, with the yellow circles are on the front.
That's like Sylvain Chavanel, who's on domestic duty, so we know he's not the team leader for today. And there was a time when Sylvain Chavanel would have been a stage you'd think would suit him perfectly.
Yeah. I think some of those days are gone to a certain extent with Chavanel, and he doesn't fancy his chances today. Meanwhile, Peter Sagan in the World Champions jersey has his team working hard for him now. We have been scratching our head a little, wondering where Tinkoff were, not sharing the work particularly well. Marcus Borchardt, though, for BMC leads the way for that outfit. Etixx Quickstep have a couple of riders, maybe even 3, who you could make a plausible case for today. Dan Martin being one of them, Julian Alaphilippe being a very obvious other, and don't rule out as well the young Czech Petr Vakoč, the winner of the Flèche Brabançon, or the Brabantse Pijl, if you prefer it in Flemish, or the Arrow of Brabant if you prefer it in English, but that just sounds wrong.
I don't think people need to worry about that graphic showing Thomas off the back. So he'll be in the cars just picking his way back up sort of slowly. It's not a kind of a critical situation.
Oh, look at the face of Alberto Contador there in 3rd wheel. Matteo Tossato doing work for him, but Contador looks so uncomfortable. Still riding, of course, with the effects of that heavy fall yesterday. And don't forget, he has been down again today on that same shoulder, and then had to chase back on over a 2-minute gap, as Geraint Thomas is having to do now to get back onto the peloton. This will be relatively comfortable for Thomas, though, as he just uses a little bit of slipstream from that moto and back into the convoy of cars. Won't take him too much longer before he's back in, but then, of course, that's not the end of it. He has to weave his way right the way through the peloton and get up to the front, where I would assume Chris Froome finds himself, or close to it at least.
And it goes to show the respect that he's held in these days, Geraint Thomas, and the fact that even after a puncture, they're going to put a graphic on a screen telling you that Thomas is behind. It's that's kind of what the big riders get in the Tour de France. So it's a credit to where he is in the sport these days.
Yeah, he's a name, isn't he? He's a name. I think it's his 7th Tour as well. I might have got that wrong. But he seems to have been around forever, Geraint Thomas. So 3 minutes and 35. Still holding their advantage and still posing a problem for the chase. Pretty soon they will be approaching the high point of the latter end of this race when they go over the Sainte-Croix-Hague, or Hague. And that's self-evident that they've been climbing when you look at their faces. Jasper Stuyven on the front, the young Belgian, and Paul Vos is hurting in the polka dot jersey, but he's holding the wheel. Benedetti is just dropping off a little bit, and I wonder if he's about to part company with the other 3 riders. Good effort from Paul Vos, what a ride.
It's been a big couple of days for him, straight into the Tour de France, and he'll now be officially the most aggressive rider of the Tour so far. Will have done almost 400 kilometers, 300, yeah, probably about 360 kilometers off the front so far, which is not bad.
Yeah,
2 days into the race.
Sorry, David. Benedetti is just beginning to show a little bit of sign of weakness now in that breakaway group, the Italian from the Trentino region, alongside a German. Italy versus Germany, but on the same team, mirroring the football yesterday. In fact, Cesare Benedetti did an interview. He was asked about the prospect of, bearing in mind he rides for a German team, his nation playing Germany, and he said, look, I come from Trentino, right up in the north of Italy. Up there we consider ourselves to be pretty much Germans anyway. And he speaks fluent German as well, Cesare Benedetti.
On message.
He's on message. Yeah, you don't upset the team, you don't bite the hand that feeds you. So 25 kilometres to go as they pass through that arch. They have just 25k to go, and where there were 4, there are now 3. Jasper Stuyven has done a bit of damage getting to the front, and that's seen Cesare Benedetti drop off the back. 3:37 now. It's holding firm. The last 2 or 3 kilometres of chasing have yielded almost nothing, and in fact it's just beginning to go out again.
Yeah, and they need to bring some time back. Now Tinkoff take control. So it's in their interest to do this and try and make the race as hard as possible for these final 25 kilometres in order to distance Mark Cavendish, and the hope that Peter Sagan can get a gap and not only win the stage but take the yellow jersey. So that is their responsibility to do it.
It's really interestingly poised now, and Tinkoff do have to react. They have the big race favourite in their midst. You can see him in the rainbow bands and the white jersey towards the left-hand side of the road in about 30th place. Alongside him, he has Rafa Majka, the Polish national champion, and in front of him, the Czech national champion, Roman Kreuziger. They've got a strong team, and they're going to have to use it if Sagan is going to fulfil his ambition of a stage win and of the yellow jersey that would almost, well, no, it would go with it. In fact, if Sagan finishes first or second and isn't beaten by Cavendish or Kittel, he will be the leader of the race, even if he doesn't win the stage. Now Adam Hansen is on the front for Lotto Soudal. He's got Tony Galopin, who's a possible stage winner here, to work for. So Lotto Soudal are joining in the chase. Benedetti, confirmation that he's no longer part of the breakaway group, so it's just Vos, Stuyven and Brain now. Doesn't help the fact that they've lost one of their number. Just increases the percentage that they're all going to have to work, and they do have to work together, these 3. Up until the point, of course, where if they do stay away, then it becomes a battle amongst them. But we're a long way from that point just yet, and it's still a big if.
Yeah, and I think because of the way the course is, those final 10 kilometres, there won't be so many tactics after they've been off the front all day like this. They'll all be tired, and it's difficult enough that it will just be going on legs, I think, and what's left, who's feeling freshest, if I don't think any of them will be feeling fresh, but who's less exhausted.
One of those 3 riders up the road Stuyven and Brain are both on the same time in the general classification. They're both 10 seconds down on the yellow jersey of Mark Cavendish, and Paul Voss is 2 minutes and 30 seconds down. So he has less to gain, if you like. Although there are King of the Mountains points as well, let's not forget that. At the final climb with just under a kilometre of racing to go. And that might be another finish line that they have in mind. If they can just stay away, mind you, if they get to that point, they're in for a stage win as well. So the two ambitions don't necessarily contradict each other.
They are, because, yeah, the final climb is classified about a kilometre from the finish. But even if they make it to there, it's a hard final kilometre, a hard final 700 metres. So it's not quite over. It's not over till it's over. And that's at the finish line, because contrary to what you'd expect, the top of the final climb being the finish line, it's actually not.
1.5k to go. Just to correct what I said, it's actually just over a kilometre, 1.5k from the top of that climb to the finish line. And the final 500 metres, David, as you've already alluded to, even if you get to those final 500 metres with a bit of an advantage, if it's cost you, if you've been into the red to get to that point, which you almost certainly will have done, they're going to feel like an eternity to get up, aren't they? It's not a particularly steep ramp, but it's a ramp.
Felt like an eternity this morning in the rain, that's for sure. And you could imagine what it was going to be like. And
yeah.
It's not. And there was a little bit of a headwind this morning. It's difficult to see now if there still is from where we are. But if there is, then that's going to make it even more difficult, because there will be gaps opening. And if the gap goes, then the strong guys at the front are going to be able to put even more time into the people behind, because it's just going to escalate. The uphill gradient and a headwind will stop. Once you blow, you'll just come to a stop.
Well, these three riders fairly soon will be at the northern extremity of this race. They'll hit the coast and they'll turn right-handed and head in a southeasterly direction and into Cherbourg. They've got another, 7 or 8 kilometres before they make that turn as they head towards the coast. They're heading east at the moment, and then it'll become a southeasterly direction. Big crowds out again. Cycling fans love to see a breakaway with a fighting chance. When it's a formality, that's less attractive as a proposition. But when there is a sniff of danger for the peloton, then we have a bike race. And we most certainly do at this point. 3 minutes and 4 seconds. Coming up to a critical point, 21.5 kilometres is all they've got left to bring this all back.
Well, especially when you take into account the next 10 kilometres are sort of almost always downhill. So it's not going to be very easy for the peloton to bring much time back during that, because the break won't be travelling much slower than the peloton downhill. So it's going to be a case of the teams shouldn't take this for granted, the fact it's 3 minutes at 21 Ks, because not much time we brought back until the bottom of the next little climb, entering into Cherbourg at 10 kilometres to go.
Did I spot the big lumbering figure of Ian Stannard showing a bit of ambition to move to the front of the peloton then? I think I did, and certainly he wasn't alone in terms of Team Sky sending numbers forward. Direct Energie leading the way, but in the company of Team Sky as things stand, and their time gap just stubbornly refusing at the moment to dip under 3 minutes to go. 2.2 kilometres of tarmac separates these three riders from the chase. Well, Stannard hasn't made his way all the way to the front, but Team Sky on the left-hand side of the road with Vasil Kirienka, I think probably Luke Rose, the rider on second wheel, and Ian Stannard are there. Geraint Thomas is visible as well, having made his way back. Well, Chris Froome is actually the rider just tucked in behind Ian Stannard. Vauclair at the back, and Steve Cummings, having done a huge amount of work for Mark Cavendish today, has resumed the Cummings berth at the back of the race. Little Breton flag in Normandy, the black and white. Hard men come from this part of the world. 20 kilometres. That's all that remains for these three men as Jasper Stuyven just tries to shake out some of the hurt from his legs, some of the toxins that will be building up as every pedal stroke gets harder and harder. All the little fibres, all the ligaments in his joints, everything starts to just creak, seize up and hurt at this point, because he can't hold anything back, nor can any of them, as Brain takes his place at the front of the pace line. Paul Voss has done incredibly well to hang on to the wheels of Brain and Stuyven. His second day in a breakaway. He's seen Cesare Benedetti depart from the move. which has a chance. Sylvain Chavanel for Direct Energie has been on the front for quite a while now. Team Sky and Astana, the two teams behind them. And now the gap does just about come under 3 minutes for the first time since it went out.
And that also shows that the pace isn't particularly high. The fact one rider has just been controlling it for that amount of time. And it was the same with Steve Cummings. He did so much work, but at the same time, that's indicative of the peloton not being completely committed to the chase. At the moment, you need to have 2 or 3 or 4 guys, maybe even 5, rotating through as hard as they can to try and bring this back. Now they're hitting this big descent. They've got 5Ks when they get on the big road that we saw before the brakes on. That's going to be a good opportunity for the teams to kind of get themselves in positions and start what I imagine will be a sort of drag race down here, because at 10Ks to go, they're all going to want to have their leaders placed at the front.
There was a glimpse of Marcel Kittel in the green jersey right at or towards the back of the bunch, which is not where he wants to be. I wonder if some of the uncategorised lumps and bumps that they've been going over on the road to Cherbourg have already started to take their toll on the big German, who really doesn't climb. And I think we can say that.
Also must forget he crashed earlier in the day, so he might have just decided that it might be in a bit of pain and just knows this stage isn't good for him, just taking it as essentially a sort of day off.
Yeah, there he is. You can see the green jersey, just a flash of green. Oh, actually, that was a Cannondale rider, I think. Vauclair is the man on the back, and BMC are the team on the front. There's Luke Rowe, who crashed yesterday in that incident involving Alberto Contador. Richie Porte and CJ Van Garderen.
That was Richie just shouting to him to stay on the right-hand side of the road in order to block Sky from coming up. So he just had the Michael Shah on the front, and he was just telling him, make sure you keep on the right, which is kind of the tactic to stop yourself getting swamped, which is what's going to happen now if he doesn't move back over to the right-hand side of the road.
And more reinforcements for BMC make their way to the front. What a strong team they have. Matt Heyman from Orica Bike Exchange leading out his trio, at least, of potential stage winners. Looking at the likes of Michael Matthews, one of the big favourites for today. Also hampered by injury, though, having crashed yesterday a little bit. Simon Gerrans, too. Watch out for them. And now the pace is starting to bite. But still, that advantage remains at 2:56. And still, these three men have a chance. 16.8k. Worrying times for the race.
Yeah, it is. They should have known, or on the big descent, on a descent like this, it was going to be difficult for them to bring back. But at the same time, the moment these guys hit the upcoming hills, then the time's just going to disappear very rapidly.
Yeah, it's less than 10 kilometres before they start to hit the penultimate, if you like, uncategorised climb, which is almost as hard as the final climb, actually. Wonder how much reconnaissance they will have done. The teams have been based up in this part of the world, scattered all across the Cherbourg Peninsula, ever since they arrived a couple of days before the racing got underway, and they've had an opportunity, which they don't often get to do on the Tour de France, to really scout out not only yesterday's stage, but also stage 2. And I'm sure that all of them, you would have hoped, or the vast majority of the peloton, will have taken the opportunity to get into Cherbourg and ride this finale.
It's definitely a finish you'll have wanted to see beforehand, because the profile, it's very hard to read from the profile what it's like, and I think at this early stage in the Tour de France, even if it hadn't been nearby, a lot of riders probably would have gone and checked it out anyway, because it makes a massive difference.
Alexis Goujard is a very strong rider, actually, from AG2R La Mondiale. He's just dropped off, and he's in the company of Thomas Vauclair and a rider from Lotto Sudas, Thomas de Gent, a rider I was just talking about. De Gent, a man who's a former stage winner and pink jersey wearer on the Giro d'Italia. Struggling a bit today, though, the man from Lotto Soudal. BMC have control of things at the front.
That's Rohan Dennis on the front, former hour record holder. So that's the kind of guy they're lucky to have, who can do this sort of effort. And Ramūnas Navadauskas of Cannondale next to him in the Lithuanian national champions jersey. He'll be looking after Tom Yelesatcher, I think. Although he wasn't there on his wheel, that was another Cannondale rider.
Well, Cannondale, Drapac, as they now called, are a team of opportunists, really. Pierre Rolland might be a rider you have to take into consideration today. Not necessarily one of the GC favourites, and an outside, at best, chance of a podium in the general classification in Paris, I would imagine. So he might be a rider who would look to just try and take his opportunities, and maybe today. Wouldn't be the most surprising thing in the world to see Pierre Rolland attack, but he's not up towards the front of the race at the moment.
He actually attacked in the Tour de France stage in Sheffield. He was off the front there on a similar finish, what proved to be a little bit too early.
Well, the World Champions jersey is there, right over on the left-hand side of the road. Tinkoff only have one rider at the moment working for him. Could do with a little bit more assistance, Peter Sagan, and so too could BMC in terms of dragging this back. 2:44, 2:45 the advantage, 13.7 kilometres, and they are in the outskirts of Cherbourg now. But this series of climbs that await the breakaway group might just spell the end of their endeavour, or if they can get over the first one and give themselves a real possibility of holding this chase off.
The rain will help them as well as they go into the sort of the technical parts of the outer town. And you can see how big that gap is. It's taken that long for them to catch Benedetti, who was dropped a good 8 Ks ago. So that puts it in perspective.
Cesare Benedetti, the first of the breakaway riders to be subsumed by this fast, furious, but pressured chase. The outcome still in the balance. Michael Scher, the Swiss rider, big engines. BMC have a team of big engines as well to look after TJ Van Garderen and Richie Porte, and they're going to need them. All the other teams benefiting from the work that they're doing at the moment, all with their favourites for the date. We'll be hoping that BMC do all the work to bring this back to win a comfortable distance, because 2:41 with just 12.8 kilometres is not comfortable. Paul Voss soldiers on. And so too does Vegard Brain from Fortuner Vital Concept. Really good for them, both actually. Fortuner Vital Concept to get consecutive days riders in the breakaway. That's what they're all about on the Tour de France, that team. And for Bora Argon to have, for the second successive day, 2 riders in the breakaway, and Paul Voss being represented on both occasions, is remarkable. Well done to him. 2 mountain points he's got, so too does Jasper Stuyven, and there's one more King of the Mountains opportunity to come with just 1.5 kilometres remaining of the race. So it's right in the balance. 2 minutes and 36 their advantage, 12.2k. We're going to have to take a short break and then we'll be back with the finale. Still just about over 2 minutes advantage and 8.7 kilometres remaining, but look at the pedal stroke now, it's laboured, they are climbing. This is the penultimate uncategorised climb on the outskirts of Cherbourg before they head down to the Old Port and then head out of town again and up the last categorised climb of the day. The peloton come through 10 kilometres to go, so there we are. They have about 1.3 kilometres of advantage on the road.
And compare this, this is what we were saying before about how these guys, they've been out there since very early on in the stage all day riding through, so I think you can just see the level of exhaustion now, and I think contrary to them, as Stuyven goes.
Well, Stuyven decides that Voss and Brain aren't going to do this for him. He's got to go it alone. This is the steepest part of this climb. He'll turn left-handed, and then finally, when it levels out, it doesn't entirely level out, because at the top of this climb, there is a long false flat, almost a drag, which is really going to sap the strength as well. But yeah, Stuyven's gone.
No, and this is the best move for him. It's, he could see the other guys were just completely buckled, so he's realised there's no point in sticking with them. He may as well go on his own. And it doesn't finish now. Like he said, he's still got about 800 metres until it starts to go down. Then it's a big descent, big road. The descent itself isn't so long, probably 2 Ks. And then he's just going to have to put his head down and time trial his way to the next climb. But 1 minute 55, we'll see what's going on in the peloton behind in a minute. And that's going to give us, there we go. So Sky are now taking control. Wout Poels coming up on the left. That's Geraint Thomas. Luke Rowe and Ian Stannard have now done their work. We saw that before. So now it's down to Wout Poels and Geraint Thomas to keep Chris Froome placed right up there at the front safely.
Already riders are being put under serious pressure. Tony Martin now on the front for Alaphilippe and for Dan Martin. Geraint Thomas is still there, and now you can see Orica Bike Exchange moving up on the right-hand side of the road, but for now it's Etixx Quick-Step trying to reel back in the 3 riders out front. Jasper Stuyven, though, the big danger today. Marcel Kittel is at the wrong end of the peloton, and this will not be to his liking whatsoever. Chris Froome looking cool as you like. He's got his troops alongside him and with him, and he's right at the front, just looking around, calmly assessing where everybody is. He has the world champion on his wheel. Rui Costa is there from Lampre Merida as well.
To be honest, I'm very surprised that he hasn't got more riders around him, Chris Froome. Wout Poels tried to come up and didn't have the legs and dropped back again. So all he's got is Geraint Thomas now with him, instead of what we expected to be kind of a show of force from Sky. Isn't actually the case right now.
Well, some of the BMC riders who've done their bit, Michael Scher just going backwards as well. They've done so much work to bring this to within touching distance, the chase. But 1:39 is what was being told now between Stuyven and that chase being orchestrated by Team Sky and Etixx Quick-Step as things stand.
Bossa Vivo trying to work his way back up, but that's what happens when you're badly placed. It's not necessarily that it's all the guys that get dropped in front of you and open up the gaps. It doesn't matter if it's the strongest guy in the world, you still need to be at the front when it gets difficult.
This is a great move from Jasper Stuyven. What a talent he is, emerging really as a force this year with Trek Segafredo. Brilliant victory at Kuurne, Brussels Kuurne, where he attacked a breakaway group in not dissimilar circumstances. Totally different kind of race, different occasion, different time in the season, different parcours, but the same tactical acuity, the same sense of when to go, and he's really asking a difficult question now of the chase. He's got 1.5 minutes and 6.9 kilometres to go. He's descending. He's got one more climb to go, though. Tony Martin, he's done his bit and he's popped off the back.
You can see how difficult this is. It's just kind of it's a kind of attrition at the moment. So the first part of the race has happened from the back. There's Alberto Contador on the left grimacing, but he's up there, well placed. Edvald Boasson Hagen with the Norwegian national champions jersey, and there's Wout Poels has made his way back up for Team Sky. So he's sitting there looking after Chris Froome.
Greg Van Avermaet is the rider tucked in third place on the wheel of Richie Porte. No sign of TJ Van Garderen just at the moment. The other big GC rider for BMC at the front of the race, but Van Avermaet holding the wheel of Porte very comfortably, in inverted commas, at the moment. I'm sure it's nothing like comfortable for him at the moment. So Stuyven is descending down to the Old Port in Cherbourg. Long, fast, wide roads these, and mercifully dried out after the rain. He'll turn left-handed and then it flattens out. He'll go round the port and then he'll start to climb again.
These boulevards are the worst-case scenario for Stuyven because it allows the peloton behind for people to move up the sides. The perfect situation for him now would be windy roads left and right in order to kind of cause disarray behind. But now we're going to see teams are going to be able to get themselves back together, reorganise. You can see they're all a little bit scattered. Team Sky are managing to do that. That's Sergio Henao, who's now made his way back up to the front. So there's Michael Matthews for the green helmet, the Orica Bike Exchange. Peter Sagan, who know that's one of the guys that he needs to mark, because he's got very similar attributes to Peter Sagan. He's kind of a punchy sprinter, not quite the level, but nobody is of Peter Sagan. But Michael Matthews certainly is one of the best bike riders in the world when it comes to a finish like this.
Fascinatingly poised still, 1 minute and 28 seconds. It's not going anywhere. That's partly because Stuyven is descending and they're all descending at maximum speed, and Stuyven can match the pace of the peloton. When it flattens out and starts to climb again, Stuyven will lose time. Of that, there's absolutely no doubt. The question is how much and how quickly. It's gone out ever so slightly, over 1 minute 30. Huge crowds in Cherbourg. He turns right-handed, he'll turn right-handed again, and then he will start to climb.
It's coming up to 5 kilometres to go there. That's the banner you can see just in the...
Yeah, well, Richie Porte has had a puncture. So that's a back wheel puncture for Richie Porte, and he curses his bad luck. No great panic. He's getting a neutral service change of wheel there from the Mavic car, so he hasn't got his own team car working for him, and it's not the smoothest of changes, but there's nothing Porte can do about it except stand there. And don't forget, there is no, well, we're not inside 3 kilometres, and even if we were, there is no 3 kilometre rule applying today.
That was a horrible wheel change, and you can see the frustration, and the reason his car's not there is because the peloton's just been completely destroyed on that climb. So the peloton's stretched out, and the commissaires will be doing what they call barrages, where they keep the cars back. Now the thing is, what should have probably happened was one of his teammates stop with him and give him the wheel, because that would have no doubt been quicker than the neutral service which we saw happening.
Well, he only had 2, and one of those was Greg Van Avermaet, who's on the hunt for a yellow jersey and a stage win himself. Here we go. He's about to climb the last Cat 3 climb of the day, and he's got a very real chance now of taking mountain points if he can hold them off over the top of this climb. It's only short, but it's quite steep, the Côte de la Glacerie. Get over the top of this, and it's all there to play for Jasper Stuyven as Lotto Soudal move to the front now.
No doubt for Tony Galopin, who I think that's right in the second position there, because again, this is a finish that suits him. We saw him last year. He won 2 stages and a similar sort of punchy small climbs, and 120 now. He's managed to hold that off. It's an incredible ride, but now it's going to get hard because he's just hit the bottom. This is the false flattish, and then it's just going to get steeper and steeper, and then we're going to have the 14% section in about 1 kilometre from now.
Well, Who can say? Who can say which way this is going to go at the moment? Ramanas Navadauskas from Cannondale with the lime yellow-green helmet and the white jersey, the Lithuanian national time trial champion, just looking around to see where his team leader, his favoured rider for the day is. And now Stuyven is climbing. It's a drag all the way up to a roundabout. He'll go 3/4 of the way round the roundabout, and then he'll hit this sharp ramp that, David, you were just talking about. And he almost wheeled himself out of the saddle there. He felt himself flagging and thought, no, I've got to. This is the moment. I can't allow myself anything other than full commitment here, otherwise it is game over.
He's doing a fantastic ride. His cadence is still high. He's kind of bouncing, also switching between in the saddle and out the saddle. He doesn't look like someone who's completely exhausted. So obviously the other two guys were holding him back. So he chose the perfect moment to leave them behind. He'd used up what he could get from them in the flats beforehand and just left them just at the perfect moment.
Well, BMC still have two riders. They've lost Richie Porte, of course, to that puncture, but Greg Van Avermaet is sitting handily placed in about 10th wheel. Say handily placed. I don't think anyone's handily placed until this man has been reeled in. There he is on the general classification. He's only 10 seconds down on the yellow jersey of Mark Cavendish, which, incidentally, and let's not forget that in the midst of all this, we haven't seen for some time. Don't know where Mark Cavendish is. Certainly saw Marcel Kittel in the green jersey struggling to maintain contact with the peloton. Hunting for him in that shot. And he's not there as far as I can make out.
Matt Hayman coming
get
up
to the front. Matt Hayman for Orica Bike Edge get to the front as well.
So now Tinkoff. So now Tinkoff are taking control, because this is what they need to do if they want to win today. They've played a very cool game so far, but now they have to actually bring this back in order to give Peter Sagan the chance of victory in the yellow jersey.
Well, look at that pained expression on Vasil Kirienko, the rider from Team Sky, in second wheel. On his wheel is another BMC rider in the white jersey. That's Edward Toons.
Michael Valgren, look at this. It's a Tinkoff rider, Michael Valgren, who's riding in the front. He's just so strong, young rider. That's Tom Yalsatio on the right from Cannondale. So that's who Ramanas Navadauskas has been working for. So now it's up to Orica Bike Exchange to shut these things down. You've got folks like Nairo Quintana in 4th place. And so Tom Yalsatio, this is normally the sort of finish that's perfect for him. But Michael Valgren, this is an incredible ride he's doing. He's he's splitting the race to pieces on his own.
Well, the moves are beginning to come. The talented Danish rider and the man from Cannondale Bike Exchange, Cannondale Drapac as they are. Getting my new sponsors slightly confused.
It's Daryl Impey.
He can climb, he can sprint, Daryl Impey, but he looks like he's on the limit to me. A man who looks quite fresh, though, sitting in about 3rd or 4th wheel for Etixx Quick-Step is Dan Martin, right where he wants to be at the moment. 46 seconds, and that's the roundabout that's approaching as Paul Voss finds himself swept up by Slafter, who goes again, and there's a reaction from Impey. And other riders are benefiting from that move, that effort from the South African rider trying to get across to the man from Cannondale.
And as Impey's dropped down, there's Mark Cavendish, so he has been distanced, so he's done. It's kind of where we would have expected that, to be honest. I think when we rode it this morning, we thought this would be about where he'd go, but he's done a great ride. Now it'll be up to Edvald Boasson-Hagen, if he's still there, to go, who we can just see in the middle of the screen behind Dan Martin. And now it's Tinkoff again. That's Roman Kreuziger, who's now going to try and bring back Tommy Slafter. He's got Roman Kreuziger, has his team leader, Peter Sagan, on his wheel.
Still a big group behind Slafter there, trying to bring all their favourites back into contention or doing it for themselves. No one's got to Slafter just yet. Kreuziger is dragging the white jersey and the rainbow bands of Peter Sagan closer. Now they're on the steep section. Stuyven will be climbing this steep section as Richie Porte is engaged in his own private battle to stop losing time and to close the gap to the peloton, suffering that puncture. Bad day for Richie Porte.
32 seconds.
Unlucky for him. There's the yellow jersey of Mark Cavendish. So he's not too far behind, but he is losing time. He's going around that roundabout now, so he's lost, 30 seconds to the front of this main bunch. So Roman Kreuziger driving things on.
Roman Kreuziger is doing a great ride. He's just got to, this is Roman Kreuziger, what he has to do. He has to just shut down all the attacks and take it as far as he can and try and bring back 57 seconds still. This is an amazing ride by Stuyven.
I think he's won it. I think Jasper Stuyven, if he gets over the top of this...
that's the Cav. That's the yellow jersey. We just caught a glimpse of Roman Kreuziger behind. So unfortunate for Stuyven, I think he's going to get caught. But he will make it, I think, to the climbers' points, which will be his objective now, because that way he's guaranteed to take the climbers' jersey. But now Roman Kreuziger, he's just got to control this ride. He knows he can get Stuyven. He doesn't want to go too fast. He's got to try and last for as long as he can in order to be able to control things for Peter Sagan.
Well, there's Richie Porte, and he's got a teammate to work for him and try and bring him back. These are important moments for Richie Porte. He could lose a significant chunk of time in unfortunate circumstances in his battle for the Tour de France. So one thing is certain now, as Jasper Stuyven goes over the last categorised climb of the day. He'll take 4 points. He'll be in the polka dot jersey at the end of the day. But what else does today hold for him? He can't sit up. It may have been a finishing line of sorts, but, well, they're right on him now,
He
aren't
timed
they?
that to perfection.
They are right on him now. Kreuziger has dragged the race right across to the Belgians, so he's going to wear the jersey, but it's not going to work out for him.
But he did what he needed to do in order to get that jersey, so it's a fantastic ride. And now Roman Kreuziger, he's got no more teammates left to help him, so it's his responsibility now. He can just leave Stuyven there for a bit of time. He doesn't need to bring him back immediately, because when they turn up here for the last 600 metres, it goes up again.
1 kilometre to go. Stuyven leads them through. Kreuziger dragging Peter Sagan with him. Alaphilippe is still there. So too is Daniel Martin from Etixx Quick-Step. They've got 2 cards to play. I think both their men are there. Nairo Quintana is there. Chris Froome safely tucked in. All the favourites just trying to defend their positions, or will they attack in the final 500 metres? It should be one for Peter Sagan. Everything has aligned itself in favour of the world champion. He sits in second wheel with one of the strongest men in the race working for him. The final 500 metres, though, are uphill. Look at Alejandro Valverde, he's still there. And Froome moving through the middle of the road, dragging Dan Martin with him. And Nairo Quintana on his wheel. What are they going to do? Are they going to sit there, just watch each other? Is Valverde in the mood to attack? He's in 4th wheel now. Greg Van Avermaet is still there too.
Yeah, he's got all the guys, all the people.
Alaphilippe goes on the right side of the road, or at least he moves up to the wheel of Peter Sagan. That's the wheel to be on. Valverde alongside the world champion now. Van Avermaet seems to be on the limit. Froome looks comfortable. Dan Martin with him too. And there's Michael Matthews from Orica Bike Exchange gritting his teeth. What can he do about it now? Sagan's on the front, surely not where he wants to be right now. He looks across and sees the whole race on his wheel. Nobody prepared to get past him at this moment. Sagan's going to have to do it from the front. But it's Michael Matthews who gets to the front now. The Australian Bling Matthews gets to the front. Alaphilippe has moved past him. Sagan counters. It's between Alaphilippe and Sagan at this point. The world champion, no. He wins, he triumphs. He wins stage 2. Alaphilippe thumps his handlebars in disgust at how that turned out, but what can you do about it? Contador battling through the pain, losing time to Chris Froome. He's been down on both the opening stages of this edition of the race. He's hurting the Spaniard, but he crosses the line and he's lost time to Quintana. He's lost time to Chris Froome, and his chances of overall victory have just taken another dent. So too have Richie Porte as well. Don't forget, he suffered a puncture in the closing stages of today's stage, and he too will be watching the time just ticking over. They're coming across in dribs and drabs. Domenico Pozzovivo is coming across. Contador still not at the finishing line. That is how badly he is hurt, and only now does he stop the clock, and he is 47-48 seconds down on the time of Peter Sagan, who was in a group containing Chris Froome and, of course, Nairo Quintana. Well, Mark Cavendish, he knew it was not going to be a day where defending the yellow jersey was going to be anything but easy, and so it proved. Sepp van Marke for company, and another group of stragglers here, Wout Poels for Team Sky, the Domestique. They are accompanying the yellow jersey, who's just going to have to hand it over. But what a man he's handing it over to. Another world champion, just as Mark Cavendish was a world champion in 2012 and a winner on the Tour de France. Well, so too is Peter Sagan.
Comes Richie Porte. Richie Porte's finally coming up, so 1 minute 33. This goes to show on a stage like this, such big time gaps can happen due to different incidents. Obviously, Contador's suffering from his crashes, but that I don't think Richie Porte could have possibly had a puncture at the worst moment. On that descent, no team cars behind. That's 1 minute 44, 1 minute 45 that he's lost.
That is a large amount of time to lose on an innocuous stage like that because of a puncture. That has done a serious amount of damage to Richie Porte's hopes of a win, or indeed hopes of a podium in Paris, have taken a major blow.
You can see how deep Peter Sagan had to go there. There was no time for a salute or anything, and I think he found himself a bit too far forward, kind of took himself back, but only just got round Alaphilippe. I mean, Alaphilippe did a fantastic sprint, and Alejandro Valverde in 3rd place. It looked Dan Martin a couple of places further back. So it was all the usual suspects, the people we expected, but I don't think that was easy for Sagan, but you know, he did what he had to do, and that's incredible considering the pressure he was under. And they rode incredibly coolly.
A mop of the brow from the world champion. He's lining himself up for interview duties, and perhaps we'll hear from him shortly. It's always good to hear. He was under immense pressure to deliver today, wasn't he, David?
Yeah, he did.
Everybody had him down as the favourite. It looked like it suited him. He's in the rainbow bands. He's after a stage win. He's after the yellow jersey, and he's got it.
I know, and I think they rode incredibly well, Tinkoff, considering as well the dramas they're having with Alberto Contador. Michael Valgren just crossed the line there. The turn he did with about 3 Ks to go was like already put everybody in the red, I think. We can see here the sprinter Alaphilippe there jumps. You've got Michael Matthews in third. Now look, Peter Sagan, he'd been waiting there, waiting for somebody else to go because he knew he was too far forward. So Alaphilippe going was perfect situation for it. Ended up being the lead out he needed because he couldn't have gone himself so far out. Otherwise, Alaphilippe would have come round him. So he almost bluffed him into going. But you can see it wasn't easy for him. It wasn't the usual sort of domination we expect from Peter Sagan. He had to go deep for that. And I think, look at that. I mean, he knew there's not even a punch or anything. I think he was just like, he had to go that hard.
What a phenomenal rider he is. Third place yesterday, Peter Sagan, and a win today on totally different races, a totally different parcours. How versatile is our world champion? And how honoured we are, frankly, to be watching a rider like him in the form of his life. He wins. Alaphilippe is in second place. Alejandro Valverde is in third. Dan Martin, frustrated, I would imagine, to be in fourth. Bling Matthews, didn't work out for him today. Michael Matthews, fifth place. Wilco Kelderman for Lotto Jumbo in sixth. Galopin, seventh. Greg Van Avermaet will be disappointed with eighth, having got himself in the right move. And Chris Froome on defensive duty today, defending his GC position, making up the last man in the top 10. There will be changes in the general classification. Froome will be happy to see them. Others will be appalled by what they see at the end of the day when it all gets printed off and they look down and see where they are. Alberto Contador has suffered today, and so too has Richie Porte. Well, it was exactly what we wanted from today. Wildly unpredictable, very dramatic. Pick the bones out of that, Gary.
Well, we said there would be time gaps among the contenders, didn't we, Chris? But we weren't expecting that. We will see the GC and just how big those time gaps are after the break. Well, no celebration is the new celebration for Peter Sagan. To be fair to him, I don't think he had time or the strength. It was a real fight up that final climb, but he took the stage win from Julian Alaphilippe, and Alejandro Valverde here to help Nairo Quintana, but free to go for things once Quintana is safely in the group as he was. Dan Martin was fourth, Michael Matthews fifth, and it was Wilco Kelderman and Tony Galopin. Greg Van Avermaet was in eighth, but the bad news for BMC is Richie Porte. And Chris Froome right up there and looking strong in 10th place. And that's what this result has done to the overall classification. Peter Sagan has now taken the yellow jersey for the first time in his brilliant career, following Mark Cavendish yesterday. Julian Alaphilippe is second at 8 seconds. Alejandro Valverde third at 10. Warren Barguil at 14. Then Chris Froome up to 5th, 14 seconds down. Greg Van Avermaet is 6th. Quintana is 7th. These men are all on the same time. Roman Kreuziger, Simon Gerrans and Dan Martin. Right, well, we will talk in a moment about the implications of that stage finish for the overall classification, and there are some large implications. But first, let's hear from the stage winner, who's always good value, Peter Sagan.
You win a stage on the Tour de France. That must be a massive satisfaction for you. Can you explain what happened in the final kilometers of this one?
I'm very surprised I won because I was thinking in the front it's still 2 guys. And then I finish first, and I didn't know that. And just I am here, and everybody talking about I won. Then I'm very surprised, I'm very happy. And the team today make a very big job, very good work. And Roman Kreuziger, he helped me a lot the last climb. He was unbelievable. He pulled all the climb until 500 meters, and then it was just on my legs. And everybody just came in the front after I start the sprint. And when I see it, I know somebody starts. And Alaphilippe was very close to win, but I beat him in the finish.
The other good news, it may be a surprise, yellow jersey for you.
Yeah, it's very nice. First time in my career, and it's unbelievable.
I'm wearing very nice jersey. I'm very happy for this. Yellow first time is also something special.
Congratulations, thank you, Peter.
Funny, it's not that long his tour career, but it's hard to imagine that he hasn't worn yellow already. Has won a stage one, of course, but there was a prologue in front of it. That was back in 2012 on his tour debut, so it wasn't enough to get him the yellow jersey. And you can see him getting the congratulations there from his from the Tinkoff staff. There's Mark Cavendish, who knew really that the yellow jersey was going to go today, so he won't be at all distraught. He might be a little frustrated. He might have something to say about how much help Dimension Data got from the other teams today as far as pulling in the brake went. But all the congratulations, including from the man he beat, Julien Alaphilippe, going to Peter Sagan. The big news of the day as far as the general classification went, though, was Alberto Contador crashing again and losing a massive amount of time, 47.48 seconds. Richie Porte, though, who had a mechanical at just the wrong time and a disastrously long wheel change, lost the better part of 2 minutes. Day two and Richie's tour is pretty much over, which is an awful thing to say.
Well, it is, so don't say it. I mean, we have seen that the first couple of days in the tour, like Quintana, the obvious one last year, a couple of minutes gone, never gets it back. But sometimes it goes around and comes around as well. I mean, some of the contenders had some good luck today. Others lost a few seconds. Even Nibali lost, I think, 10 or 11 seconds on today's stage. But it might pale into insignificance. It could prove critical. We just don't know. It's certainly not the way you'd want to start, though.
No, I mean, there are people who could come back from giving other people a 2-minute head start in the mountains, but you wouldn't imagine that Richie's one of them. He needed everything to go right to put him in a position in the final week to be in contention.
I think for me, he's already second tier, you know, a super rider, but second tier tends to have a bad day. But he might be one of the ones that, given a few seconds, when it really goes right to the edge, then he'll be given an opportunity to get away. So if he's there or thereabouts, he's got the form. I think he could be given an opportunity to win a stage and maybe get himself back up there as they were favourites watch each other.
Yeah, and perhaps it's decided, the two-headed attack from BMC, he's probably now riding more for TJ Van Garderen than the other way round. Let's move up a tier then. Alberto Contador is his talk. I mean, he crashed yesterday, he crashed again today, he didn't look good today and lost a lot of time.
No, he's had 2 crashes. We said yesterday, use up some of your reserve every time you fall off. So he's had an awful start to this race. He won't give up fighting, but he needed everything, really. He wasn't the favourite, so he's given up valuable time.
All right. Now, the presentations are about to start, and as I say, for the second day running, we've got a man taking the yellow jersey for the first time in his career, although first, of course, he's going up to take the stage winner's flowers and glass vase and whatever else Cherbourg has got laid on for him. Let's join David and Ned.
Well, there can hardly be a cycling fan across the world who won't be enjoying the sight of this man taking to the top step of the podium and taking the stage win. Peter Sagan. Suppose Julien Alaphilippe would beg to differ, but he can do it on almost any course, on almost any given day. Stage 2 goes to Peter Sagan. What a phenomenon he is, David Miller.
There I was thinking he was tired when he crossed the finish line because he didn't salute. He actually thought he was riding for 3rd place. It's brilliant. But it just goes to show the way he controlled that sprint. Roman Kreuziger obviously set him up perfectly, but then he found himself isolated and he managed somehow to kind of control it and keep cool and let Alaphilippe essentially lead him out.
He's the master of almost any kind of race, and he's the master of the post-race interview as well. Brilliantly entertaining to find out that he thought there were a couple of guys up the road. But they weren't. Look, that was the results. Peter Sagan wins from Julien Alaphilippe, and an unbelievably strong ride once again from Alejandro Valverde. At his ripe old age, mixing it with these young guns. Peter Sagan and Alaphilippe, who one day soon is going to win himself a Tour de France stage. Who'd bet against it being on this edition of the race?
It has to be said, Alaphilippe is very much a rider who's... Oh, and there's poor Sam Bennett, who's been suffering all day, so hats off to him for making it through.
And the big white van behind him is the Voiture Balai, and this is the Maillot Jaune. Much like Mark Cavendish yesterday, this is the missing garment in his wardrobe. Multiple green jersey wearer, of course. He's made the green jersey his own over the last 4 years, but he comes to this race a different man in the rainbow bands of the world champion, and now he has the yellow jersey of the Tour de France. Who knows, he might well hang on to it for a good few days yet as the road flattens out a bit. We begin to head south and we leave Normandy, and we have a worthy race leader. Showing off both jerseys, and why not? They're the best in the world, and so's he. Indisputably, Peter Sagan is the star, if not of the whole cycling world, then certainly of today.
And as well as the yellow jersey, he'll be taking the green jersey too. And Chris, third yesterday on a perfectly flat stage, winning today going uphill. If he hasn't demoralised every other green jersey contender by now.
I think in the recent years it's stopped being a sprinter's jersey. It's become the best all-rounder competition, and I think we just assumed it was for sprinters. Well, it isn't, and I think he warrants it in that guise. He's the strongest all-rounder that we've got out there, and it looks like he's heading for that even on day 2.
All right, well let's declare the green jersey finished.
Yeah, let's ignore that from now on.
And who else? You've been having a look down the finishers. Who else can be happy with their day?
I think these stages, though you wouldn't think so, can be indicative of the overall, because it says who's got the depth to fight, quick recover, get back up there, the punch. Froome looked fantastic on that short climb, and so did Quintana. Quintana was just 2 places behind him, so he's really ripping into it. I mean, getting over, probably using what happened last year as fuel. We got Aru as well in 16th position, didn't lose any time, so he's in good shape. Romain Bardet top 25 as well. I think really you've got to be top 30 on a stage like that to be thinking about the overall. So the main favourites that we're looking at are all up there. Contador is the one that isn't looking like he's going to make Paris at the moment.
No. Now, slight change of plan. We were going to bring you tomorrow's route map, but Daniel is with Mark Cavendish, so let's hear from him instead.
Mark, the way that finale panned out wasn't really helpful for you, was it, in terms of keeping the yellow jersey?
Yeah, I knew it was going to be hard. I was always going to just give it a go, just to respect the jersey, really, but it was never really going to be a finish for me, really. So, well, we knew Edvald would be there. Guys did everything for him. Steve rode incredible on the front all day. You've seen that, holding the thing. So what happens at the other teams, you kind of want to ride there at the front, but you may as well ride on the front early, and then they get the space to be there anyway. Modern cycling, I guess, and just makes it hectic. I was all right. The lads kept me out of danger, and yeah, just thought I'd dig in as much as possible.
And not really the ideal course or the right weather conditions to really savour the yellow jersey, but I'm sure you did.
It was a beautiful day, you know. It's a real honour to wear this first time in my career, and you know, yeah, like the old guys have worn it in the past. You know, I spoke to Fabian a bit about it today, and that was a really nice honour to do, being with friends.
And you're obviously flying, so there's another opportunity for a sprint win tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll see. Actually, I did go quite deep today. I think I was humming and hawing this morning whether I just sit up today, because the muscle damage you can do can affect you tomorrow. The thing is, I got the jersey, I can't just sit up, you know. I respect this race too much, I respect the sport too much, and it's hard to give it a go, you know. I'm a team road like that, so I have to respect what they do as well.
Cheers, Mark.
All right, let's take a look now at tomorrow's stage. And after 2 days and 371 kilometres, the Tour is pretty much back where it set off. Rolling out for stage 3 from Granville through a few kilometres north of Le Mans Saint-Michel. From here, though, the race leaves the coast and heads inland towards the Loire Valley, so it's likely to be one of the more chateau-heavy stages of the race for those of you who like to do a bit of property hunting by helicopter. The destination is Angers, which has a pretty nice chateau of its own. Tom Boonen won on the Tour's last visit in 2004. Tomorrow's win should go to another sprinter. We are on at 2 o'clock tomorrow, 7 o'clock for highlights, and of course 7 o'clock for highlights of today's stage tonight. A quick word about tomorrow, though, Chris. Another sprinter stage. They're sort of alternating the first few days, and Cab's going pretty well. We don't know about Kittel or Greipel as of today.
I think all of them looked in good shape on stage 1. That's the only one they've got to go off. Today, it might have been a bit of a gnarly finish, but it shouldn't have taken too much out of them. I think we'll see the same people contesting the finish tomorrow.
And as far as Mark Cavendish's tour goes, I mean, his ambition is pretty much complete. With Rio on the horizon, I mean, I know completing a tour can be good for the general condition. Would you expect him to try and get all the way to Paris, considering how difficult the final week is?
Well, I've been listening to him talking, and he stated that intention, but I think once we really get into the mountains, it's going to be a hard one to ignore, that I've got to go all the way through just to a shot at Paris when I've got this big objective on the other side of this race. I think he may choose that option when push comes to shove.
And just quickly, even though it's a flat day tomorrow and the contenders can start to rest, we've seen a bit of an indication today, haven't we?
Yeah, I mean, for some teams, they've got to go for a break, and tomorrow's another opportunity.
All right, tomorrow's another opportunity. The highlights are at 7 o'clock, and we will see you back here for those.